Hogwarts, Treasure Hunting with the Eye of God, Episode 91, Furon Visits, Christmas Gift. Ting studied hard at Niko's house, but it was soon interrupted by one thing. But the arrival of Christmas broke his originally peaceful study life. According to Niko, holidays should be like holidays, which is the real proposition of immortals like him. Ting thought about it and felt that this made sense. Books can be read every day, but the good times like holidays are one day less every day. December 25th came in a blink of an eye. The weather outside was freezing cold, but in Niko's manor, Ting wore a warm woolen sweater and enjoyed the magic of central air conditioning and felt peace and harmony. Speaking of Christmas, the most exciting thing is of course the various gifts. Although Ting also celebrated Christmas when he was in the orphanage before, in that environment, gifts were not expected. But now it is different. Since he stepped into the world of wizards and met so many friends, his expectations for Christmas gifts have skyrocketed. However, time passed by minute, and until the afternoon, Ting did not see any shadow of the gifts. He suddenly realized that without Niko Flammel's nod, the owls delivering gifts could not find him at all. These little guys who were born with navigation skills still seemed powerless in front of Niko Manor's defense measures. In desperation, Ting had to ask Niko for temporary permission. Finally, when the dinner bell rang, the gifts that should have arrived in the morning finally appeared in the hall. In addition to the owls, there were also unexpected visitors to Niko Manor. Niko is now in seclusion, and almost no one visits him. Those who can come to visit are all people Niko trusts the most. The gate of the manor opened, and a giant figure slowly walked over from afar. She was wearing a pair of black high-heeled shoes, which were as big as a small sled, and the heels were as high as 50 centimeters. However, in front of her huge body, these high heels seemed as natural as a pair of flat shoes. 11 These high heels made her already tall body even more majestic, at least more than 5 meters. If Hagrid was present, he would probably be shorter than her. But unlike Hagrid's rough appearance, her face can be called beautiful. On her olive face, there were a pair of big and black eyes, as deep and bright as lake water. The pointed nose added a bit of elegance. Her hair was delicately combed behind her head and shrunk into a shiny bun at the base of her neck, showing an intellectual beauty. She was wearing a black satin robe, revealing a noble temperament from head to toe. On her neck and thick fingers, the luxurious opal sparkled with dazzling light. In short, apart from her larger size, this half-blooded giantess is eye-catching. Ting has already recognized her identity. There are not many half-blooded giants in the entire wizarding world. Who else has this unique appearance except Madame Maxime? Ah, Mr. Niko and Madame Perenelle, that's great. Your elegance is still as good as ever. Madame Maxime said in her deep and magnetic voice, I sincerely hope that everything goes well for you. As the headmaster of Beaux Batons, Madame Maxime's respect for Nicolas Flamel is evident. In the hearts of Beaux Batons students, Tonko's status even surpasses Dumbledore's status in the hearts of Hogwarts students. After all, Dumbledore was only the headmaster for a few decades, while Nicolas Flamel was the founder of Beaux Batons. We are very good, thank you. Nicolas Flamel responded with a smile. He turned around and introduced Ting to Madame Maxime. This is Ting, a little wizard from Hogwarts. Dumbledore introduced him to me personally. His attainments in alchemy are amazing. To be honest, some of his achievements even surprised me. So this Christmas, I specially invited him to visit us. Ting walked calmly in front of the crowd and nodded slightly. Madame Maxime, hello. Hello, child. Madame Maxime glanced at Ting lightly. You look extraordinary, you must be the best little wizard in Hogwarts. So. A sly light flashed in her eyes, and she waved her huge palm gently, pointing behind her. A girl of 13 or 14 walked out slowly from behind Madame Maxime. She was wearing a gorgeous silk gown, her delicate ears were not human-like, slightly pointed, and her long silver hair fell to her waist like a waterfall, like a goddess in the moonlight. Ting had to admit that this was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Her azure blue eyes seemed to contain a mysterious magic that made people want to indulge in it involuntarily, and even do some crazy actions that they would never dare to think of in normal days. Madame Maxime raised her lips slightly, waiting for the moment when Ting made a fool of himself. However, Ting was only in a trance for a short time, and the resonance of will from the Eye of God quickly restored his clarity. But in the eyes of others, he seemed to be fine, and responded elegantly in French, Hello, beautiful lady. Madame Maxime's smile froze on her face. The girl was extremely excited at the moment, and she couldn't believe that she was fortunate enough to be invited to visit the legendary Nicolas Flamel with the principal this time. As a native of France and a student of Beaux Batons, she admired Nicolas Flamel. However, she was surprised to meet other visitors here. And from Mr. Niko's words, she keenly noticed that the little wizard named Ting seemed to be better than herself. This made her curious, and she couldn't help but look at this boy who seemed younger than herself. To be honest, she was a little jealous at first. However, when she saw Ting's handsome face, all the jealousy disappeared instantly. As a half-blooded Vila, Fleur not only inherited the stunning appearance and charming charm of the Vila, but also inherited the face control of the Vila. "Hello, Ting," Fleur couldn't help but walk forward and asked curiously, "You can actually speak French?" Of course Ting can speak French. In fact, after binding Linny's Eye of God, he automatically has a strong French talent, almost just reading a few French-related books. You know, at that time, he hadn't obtained the divine eye of the genius witch Lisa. I can only say that this is probably because Linny is from Fontaine. I'm sorry, Fleur can't control her talent very well. Although Madame Maxime apologized, there was no apology in her tone. However, this child is not affected by Fleur's charm. I am really surprised. Children with Vila blood will unconsciously exude a certain charm as they grow older. This ability needs to be learned to be controlled, and Fleur obviously hasn't mastered this skill yet. She always exudes this charm unconsciously, making others feel dull or embarrassed when they see her. Most adult wizards can't resist this ability, but just now Ting seemed to be completely unaffected by this magic. The hybrid of Vila and wizard will make the child's journey to wizarding smoother. You have an excellent student. Nicole Flamel commented, but he did not explain at all, as if it was natural for Ting to be able to do this. Mr. Nicole seems to admire you very much. How did you do it? Fleur tried to communicate with Ting in English. However, compared with Ting's fluent French, her English seemed a bit stiff and awkward. Ting couldn't help laughing. It seems that your English needs to be improved. Fleur also laughed. She touched her hair a little embarrassedly. My mother once found an English teacher for me. That person stayed in the UK for 2 years. However, his English level is definitely not as good as yours. So, maybe you can teach me English? No problem, Ting agreed immediately. This is Farong, one of the most beautiful girls in the original book. As a magical world, it is a pity that the most classic elves do not exist in the Harry Potter world. But perhaps Vila can replace the role of elves? By the way, Farong suddenly put her hands behind her back, walked forward a few steps briskly, and then turned back and asked, "Can you give me your address? Otherwise, how can I send you a letter?" Well, French tutoring? As she said, she rummaged through her pockets and shook her head helplessly. Write on my clothes. Oh, but I don't have a pen. At this point, she smiled awkwardly. Ting was slightly stunned, and then a bright smile bloomed on his face. It's no big deal. He took 2 steps forward and approached Farong. A faint fragrance came from Farong, which was refreshing. Ting reached out and gently took off 2 long silver hairs from Farong's gorgeous robe. This slightly intimate action made Farong blush. But she didn't try to dodge. Then she saw a magical scene. Ting didn't even take out the wand, but just waved her hand gently on her hair, and one of the long hairs turned into parchment with the Hogwarts school emblem, the 10th turned into a gorgeous golden feather pen. Fleur covered her mouth in surprise, and Madame Maxime's eyes flashed with admiration. This exquisite transfiguration is not something that a wizard can easily master, at least Fleur herself can't do it. But the other party is obviously younger than her, which is really amazing. As the founder and the largest school director of Beaux Batons, he has always been respected as the spiritual leader of the school. In Beaux Batons, his status is like that of the emperor, and the principals of Beaux Batons also respect Nicole very much. In addition to frequent visits and reports, they occasionally bring a dozen outstanding students with them. On the one hand, it is a reward for excellent students, and on the other hand, they want to see if there is a chance to get Nicole's favor. Fleur is such a lucky person who was chosen. But now, Madame Maxime has realized that with Ting here, no matter how outstanding Farong is, she will have to admit defeat. At the banquet, Madame Maxime witnessed the unusual attitude of Nicole and his wife towards Ting. This is not only the love of the elders for the younger generation, but also more like the casualness and intimacy between friends. Ting and Nicole also spoke in an equal manner. The tone and gesture did not sound like a junior talking to an elder, but rather like old friends reminiscing about the past. No matter how you look at it, their relationship is not simple. Madame Maxime did not think that this was because Ting had a prominent family background. After all, in front of an old monster like Nicole Flamel, even a direct descendant of Merlin was not worthy of such treatment. There was only one answer: that little wizard was really favored by Nicole. And the conversation and knowledge displayed by Ting in the conversation as well as the superb magic that was just glimpsed, seemed to prove this point. So, Madame Maxime decisively changed her strategy. Since it was difficult for Fleur to directly win the favor of Mr. Nicole, why not change the angle and win the favor of Ting? After all, for Fleur, a half-blooded Vila, it was much easier to get closer to a boy of the same age than to please a 600-year-old man who had experienced many vicissitudes of life, was knowledgeable, and had his wife by his side. Even if Ting has a strong will, Fleur is not only attractive because of her talent. She still has her own beauty and charm. If Fleur can become good friends with Ting, then she will naturally get extra care from Niko. Thinking of this, Madame Maxime glanced at her student again. Well, maybe she doesn't need to remind her, her student is already doing this. But, is she a little too proactive from time to time? To be honest, Fleur was excited and nervous when she first heard that she was going to visit the famous Nicolas Flamel. Being able to eat at the same table with such a legend, her reaction was almost as reserved as meeting Merlin, for fear of saying something wrong. Fortunately, Ting was there, which relaxed her tense nerves a lot. During the whole dinner, she chatted happily with Ting. This younger brother, who was younger than her, was very mature and well-spoken when chatting, not like a child at all, and made her giggle from time to time. After dinner, Ting was about to open her presents. Fleur came over with great interest and volunteered to help. However, when her eyes fell on the pile of presents, she was stunned. Ting's presents were piled up like a small mountain under the Christmas tree. This number was even more than the Christmas presents she received. The difference was that most of her presents came from the little wizards in Beau's batons. And many of Ting's presents came from the little witches in Hogwarts. On some of the presents, the ribbons were carefully woven into Ting's name. It can be seen that the little witches must have spent a lot of thought to achieve this. Among them, a huge rose disc was particularly eye-catching. In the fiery red petals, the silver ribbon cleverly outlined the words Ting. Ting looked at the flower plate and began to doubt the aesthetics of the little wizards. Looking at this half-baked transfiguration and the unique way of sending flowers, it was probably a sudden whim of a little fangirl from Slytherin College. He waved his wand lightly, and the flower plate instantly transformed into a round table, covered with rose prints. Well, maybe Perenelle would like this table? Episode 92, Who still takes traditional foreign language classes? Then, Ting began to put the gifts on the table and unpacked them one by one. Chocolate, chocolate, chocolate again, why so much chocolate? Furong sighed while looking through the gifts. She turned her head and asked Ting curiously, Ting, do you like chocolate? Not bad. Ting shrugged and said calmly, don't worry about it, I don't know most of the people who gave me gifts anyway. As more and more chocolates were unpacked, Ting felt like he had fallen into a chocolate workshop, with endless sweet smells all around. However, for Ting, it was a big challenge to accurately find the few truly important ones in this pile of sweet gifts. Finally, he found a target in the pile of chocolates. This is a gift from Hestia Carlo. Fleur came over curiously and read the name on the gift. Because the two were too close, Ting could even smell the faint fragrance emanating from Fleur, which made him a little distracted. Hey, I say, what is the relationship between the owner of this gift and you? Why did you look at it for so long? Fleur shouted for a while, and Ting came back to his senses. Oh, I was thinking about how to reply. Ting hurriedly explained, this Hestia is my big customer. Big customer? What did she buy from you? Fleur asked curiously. She had heard about the Wanyu shop in the previous casual chat. Love potion. Ting said directly. Fleur was speechless. Is this love potion something that students should buy? What surprised her even more was that one of these two people dared to buy and the other dared to sell. And judging from this posture, this Hestia Carlo may have returned the love potion to Ting in another way. Then why do you have to reply? Furong was still a little puzzled. I not only have to reply, but also give gifts in return, Ting explained with a smile, customers also need to be maintained. After that, he continued to search in the chocolate pile and found a few familiar names. These girls are all his important customers. Others may not send Christmas gifts, but he must prepare gifts for them. After all, who makes them all rich women? However, there are unexpected changes in the world, and people are subject to misfortunes at any time. When Ting opened the 127th piece of chocolate of various shapes, he finally touched something different. It was in the shape of a conical bottle, tightly wrapped in oil paper. This unique gift came from Severus. Ting carefully opened the conical bottle. I saw a piece of fecal stone lying quietly at the bottom of the bottle. What does this mean? Furong's eyes widened, her face full of confusion. Giving someone a feces stone as a Christmas gift? This is too weird. Yi Ting smiled bitterly and explained, Professor Snape probably meant that if he poisons me one day, this feces stone will come in handy. It can be regarded as an antidote prepared in advance. No wonder he had such a reaction. The Christmas gift Yi Ting gave him before was the Potter family's Speedy shampoo. This shampoo is as well known in the magic world as Head and Shoulders and Rejoice in the Muggle world. However, there is a little secret. This shampoo is the work of Harry Potter's ancestors. No wonder Professor Snape always avoids washing his hair. The inventor of this shampoo comes from his old enemy in his heart, the Potter family. How can the entanglement and grudges in this be explained in a few words? Starting from 8 o'clock in the evening, Yi Ting plunged into the ocean of gifts. After 3 hours of hard work, he finally opened all the gifts. Among the gifts, chocolates accounted for the majority, followed by some greeting cards and pictures. But in addition to this, there are still some truly valuable gifts, all from his friends and professors. Many professors at Hogwarts gave gifts to Yi Ting, their best student. Professor McGonagall sent a delicate wizard chess set. She seemed to have misunderstood, thinking that Yi Ting took the chess pieces in the level purely because of her love for wizard chess. Professor Flitwick sent an arm guard, made of velvet constant temperature material, which was worth a lot of money. The wand groove in the middle of the forearm was designed just right. Yi Ting tried it, and the whole process from the wand leaving her hand to the recovery was as fast as lightning, no more than 0.5 seconds. And the speed of the wand ejection was amazingly within 0.2 seconds. This kind of exquisite spell connection and time compression can probably only be done by a spell master like Professor Flitwick. It's a pity that Yi Ting used the Eye of God to cast the spell, so this arm guard was a bit of a waste in his hand. Professor Splitlaw was much simpler, some seeds of precious herbs. For this professor of herbology, choosing a gift for Yi Ting was a piece of cake. She knew exactly what this kid who wanted to take advantage of her greenhouse wanted. As for Hagrid, his gift was more down-to-earth, a large bag of heavy herbs. Yi Ting was delighted at the sight. This kind of plain and simple gift was his favorite. Mrs. Hooch was even more direct. She stuffed a Quidditch training program into Yi Ting's pocket and praised his outstanding physical fitness. She also generously promised that as long as he was interested, she would help him join the England national team for youth training in a few years. This made Yi Ting secretly astonished. It seemed that in Hogwarts, except for Filch, Mrs. Pants, and Trelaw, who lived on their salaries, other professors had their own ways to make extra money. For these professors, Yi Ting's return gifts were all clockwork beetles. On the one hand, he showed his achievements to the professors, and on the other hand, it was also in for the product. It was a win-win situation. Principal Dumbledore was not left out. He gave Yi Ting a bottle of precious dragon's blood. Yi Ting gave back a dozen thick wool socks, enough for the principal to use until next Christmas. Fred and George, these two lively guys, have been with Yi Ting since they met. After Yi Ting and Yi Ting jointly opened the Wanyu shop, they became addicted to the research and development of joke props. The two of them gave Yi Ting a large box of hardcover toffee, and the box was almost written with the 4 big words, "I have a problem." And Yi Ting gave them a book, Delicious Potion, in return, which explained in detail how to turn hard-to-swallow potions into delicious drinks and desserts, which is suitable for making various joke props. Neville was a little unexpected and actually gave Yi Ting a hardcover feather pen. Judging from his appearance, this feather pen might be all his savings. Yi Ting gave a fully automatic magic garden shovel that can help dig holes and loosen the soil. Even Lynette gave a gift, which was a Mortra rat, and no one knew where she caught it. And Yi Ting gave her an alchemical claw ring, which not only cast a protective spell, but also turned into a music box and automatically played music. Yi Ting recorded a lot of music that Lynette liked, including her favorite, Shadow Chasing the Wind. Lynette demonstrated the BGM of Cat in the Box. Of course, what made Yi Ting most satisfied was the gift from Niko and his wife. Madame Perenelle gave a high-end customized men's bowler hat. This hat borrowed the fashion design from the Muggle world, but the material is classic magic material, such as the silk of the giant spider, unicorn hair, etc. It not only feels good, but also has a certain magic resistance. As for Niko's gift, it was quite impressive. It was a golden ruby? This ruby was given to me by an alchemist when I visited your hometown a few years ago. Niko said, the alchemy skills of that master are simply amazing. I have never seen such an alchemy technique that can see through the essence of magic. I stayed to have in-depth exchanges with him. This ruby is the souvenir he gave me. Yi Ting took the ruby. It seemed to be carved from pure gold, with intricate patterns engraved on it. Yi Ting could feel that this pattern was not only beautiful, but also played a role in guiding magic. You Chinese wizards don't seem to rely on wands to cast magic. Niko introduced enthusiastically, their weapons are all kinds of strange, and there are many cold weapons. This Rui is endowed with a powerful transformation spell, which can be transformed into various weapons at will. It is really a masterpiece of ingenuity. In fact, before Nicole elaborated, Ting already knew the origin of this Rui. Because the moment he received the gift, the system in his mind had already sounded a crisp prompt, ding. Congratulations to the host for collecting the magic weapon, the Gilded Rui, and getting the reward, the Eye of God whale seat. If the system's information is accurate, then the alchemy method of the alchemist mentioned by Nicole is by no means as simple as just touching the essence. That actually represents the essence of alchemy, or as our peers say, the art of refining. It is the divine machine 100 refinements, one of the legendary 8 strange skills. The ultimate state of this alchemy technique can even achieve a miracle similar to a muggle becoming a wizard. If there is still an alchemist in this world who can be compared with Nicholas Flamel or even surpass him, then apart from the future Ting, there is only the person who masters the magic machine. Ting was surprised that the Chinese wizard world actually took on that kind of worldview, but it was reasonable. After all, in the previous lives under one person, there were characters like him, Dumbledore, and Professor Snape. However, in the short term, Ting has no plans to return to China for development, at most he will go back for a trip. After all, there, the Ministry of Magic or the government, is much more powerful than in the UK. Such a society may be suitable for ordinary wizards, but it is not very friendly to Ting, who is destined to have a future. In short, Niko's gift was a big surprise for Ting. And Ting's return gift was also quite amazing. What Ting gave to Niko was a work he had prepared long ago, clockwork mechanism reconnaissance recording type. This mechanism looks like a large dog and can move flexibly like a real dog. Its uniqueness lies in the integration of various monitors, which can detect surrounding intelligence in all directions through optical, acoustic, chemical sniffing, and other methods. In terms of intelligence, since it has enough space to accommodate logic units, its intellectual level is far higher than that of the mechanism armor. When Madame Maxim and Fleur saw Ting take out a clockwork mechanical dog, they were all stunned. Where have they seen this? Of course, they have all seen dogs transformed by transfiguration. Admittedly, transfiguration is not uncommon in the wizarding world. Those skilled transfiguration masters can transform into lifelike dogs that can run, jump, and stick out their tongues to act coquettishly. But transfiguration is transfiguration after all. It requires wizards to constantly devote their efforts to maintain it. Once their attention is distracted, the transformed creature will return to its original state. However, this mechanical dog in front of them, which is driven by magic but seems to have life, undoubtedly exceeds their cognition. When Niko told them that this clockwork dog, or this clockwork technology, was completely invented by Ting, Madame Maxim was completely silent. As the headmaster of Beau's Batons, her vision was naturally extraordinary, and she could clearly see the infinite possibilities behind this technology. As the inventor of clockwork magic, Yi has surpassed herself with this technology and has the opportunity to become a big man like Dumbledore and Niko. At this time, he was just an 11-year-old child, and it had been less than a year since he entered the gate of Hogwarts. Yi suddenly realized that the look of the tall headmaster was not right when he looked at him. What was the matter with the look that wanted to eat him? He could accept driving a big car, but this car was too big, and his appearance was not up to standard. Of course, Madame Maxim's idea was much simpler than Ting imagined. She was just thinking about whether Ting could transfer to Beau's Batons. This is not because she wants to poach people from Hogwarts, but because she feels that although Hogwarts has always been the top school in Europe, it is not good at alchemy. Didn't you see that Hogwarts' elective courses, good courses, from the 3rd grade have been cancelled? On the contrary, Beau's Batons, because of Niko, has become the best school for alchemy education. Many great alchemists come from Beau's Batons. Only in Beau's Batons, Ting's talent can be fully displayed. When she quietly revealed this idea to Niko, the old man smiled. Not impossible. But Dumbledore also likes this child, so you have to weigh the consequences of Dumbledore's anger. Maxim thought about it, and then shuddered unconsciously. Although she is also a very powerful wizard, she has to bow down to Dumbledore. So, poaching directly is not an option. So, she turned her attention to Fleur. Fleur was watching the clockwork dog with great interest, and was uncomfortable with the sudden look of the principal. Although Madame Maxim looked at her with unprecedented admiration, she always felt something was wrong. After appreciating Ting's Christmas gift, Madame Maxim took Fleur to say goodbye to Mr. and Mrs. Flamel. Ting, how about writing more letters to Fleur in the future and helping her practice English? Madame Maxim found you before leaving. Yi Ting, smiling, suggested. She pointed out lightly that this kind of friendship between top students is also very beneficial to the communication between schools. How could Yi Ting refuse such a request? Learning a foreign language is not a bad thing, no matter how you look at it. Of course, who still takes traditional foreign language classes these days? I won't write Under One Person. The plot of Under One Person takes place in 2015, and there is nothing to write about after 25 years. At most, it can be used as a background board. If you have to write about it, just write about Sister Bauer. Do you hope that the author will add Sister Bauer as the heroine? Episode 93, Holiday is over, return to Hogwarts. After saying goodbye to Farong, Yi Ting also returned to his bedroom. Although he and Farong opened so many gifts tonight, he secretly kept a few and did not open them in public. Those were several gifts from girls. Zhang Qiu gave a pair of jade chopsticks. The jade was as warm as mutton fat, and flawless. This gave Yi Ting a deeper understanding of her family background. It seemed that this woman was also a hidden rich woman. Penelope and Susan had the same idea. Both were plain woolen knittings, but one was a scarf and the other was a glove. Judging from the poor stitches of the gloves, it was probably knitted by Susan herself. There were patterns on both gloves, but they were different. One was a Hufflepuff badger, and the other was a beautiful Ravenclaw eagle. Compared with Susan, Penelope's knitting skills were much better. The lace was knitted beautifully, and Yi Ting's Chinese name was neatly embroidered in the corner, which showed her care. As for Hermione, her gift was a set of Encyclopedia Britannica? This thing is so expensive, with 32 volumes in total, and more than 30,000 pages in total. It took 8 hours to deliver it. In short, the girls' gifts were more thoughtful than each other, and they even attached their letters with the gifts, chatting with Yi Ting about their recent holiday situation. Although the words were full of trivialities, Yi Ting could deeply feel the pure girlish heart. However, Yi Ting's gift was worthy of this thought. It just so happened that Yi Ting was learning alchemy from Niko and made a lot of practice works. Among them, he gave the girls the ones he was most satisfied with. As for the rest of the works, Yi Ting stuffed all the ones he didn't like into the system, and then received a bunch of rewards that he couldn't use for the time being. For example, the flying sword, convincing people with reason, the tiger fish knife, the white tassel spear, the oath of the sharpshooter, etc. If he changed his profession, he would get it. In addition to the girls' gifts, Yi Ting was most happy that he got another Eye of God today. The Eye of God, Whale Sky, came from Prince Tartaglia. As a war maniac in Teyvat, his Eye of God ability is very suitable for fighting. In addition to giving Yi Ting the ability to control water elements, this Eye of God also gave him 3 abilities. The first is Mastery of all weapons. Tartaglia is good at using all kinds of weapons, of course, except bows and arrows. With this ability, Yi Ting can now be said to be an almighty weapon master. Compared with Tartaglia himself, he even made up for the shortcomings in bows and arrows. 820. After all, Linny and Amber are both characters who are good at bows and arrows. The second ability is the talent of element shaping. Tartaglia can shape the thunder element and water element into a solid blade, relying on this talent, and Yi Ting has more elemental power than him. This power has evolved into the ability to shape various elements at will in Yi Ting's body. The third ability is Demon King Armor. The function of this ability is to force the fusion of 2 elements. Although it will make Yi Ting's body bear a huge load, in return, it is a terrifying power beyond the limit. Tartaglia fused water and thunder, and Yi Ting has so many elements, so there are many permutations and combinations. It can be said that this is a very good burst ability. If Yi Ting had this skill in the Forbidden Forest, he might not be able to keep Quirrell. In general, Tartaglia's Eye of God is very practical, and Yi Ting's combat effectiveness has been significantly improved. After binding the Eye of God Whale Sky seat, Yi Peng fell into a deep sleep. In the dormitory of Hogwarts, Penelope lifted the quilt, got out of bed, and checked her Christmas present. It was a beautiful little mirror with a note that said, "Clean it up 3 times a day," so that she could keep her appearance neat and tidy at all times. Penelope fiddled with the little mirror and looked at the little note written by Yi Ting, "May you always be beautiful." The corners of her mouth lifted up involuntarily, and she smiled happily. Suddenly, she unexpectedly discovered that the back of the mirror could be opened. After opening it, it was also a mirror, but this mirror was not used to look at herself, because it was a peephole that could automatically show people nearby with bad intentions. There was another little note inside, "May you stay away from danger and be safe and smooth." Thinking of the boy's intentions, Penelope's smile became sweeter. In the morning, Susan sat at her desk early and started doing her homework. This semester's experience at Hogwarts gave her unprecedented confidence and gradually made her want to study hard. She hummed a brisk English tune, holding a purple feather pen tightly in her hand, writing something there. However, halfway through writing, the feather pen suddenly trembled slightly, reminding her that this paragraph was written incorrectly. Susan turned the feather pen over and flicked it with the feather on the back, and the words written in ink miraculously turned back into ink and were absorbed by the pen. Then, BBBD, Susan let go, and the pen automatically wrote the correct content on the paper. Susan took a look at the pen and really couldn't let it go. When she used this pen to write homework, she seemed to feel that the person who gave her the feather pen was standing beside her, guiding her carefully. On the same morning, Zhangqiu left home early and practiced flying on a broom in the nearby woods. However, just when she was flying happily, she suddenly made a bold move. She cancelled the magic power of the broom, and her whole body instantly lost support, falling straight down from the sky like a meteor. This sudden action was frightening to outsiders, but Zhangqiu seemed unusually calm. When she was more than 100 meters from the ground, the girl opened her hands, and suddenly a pair of wind wings appeared on her back. The rapid fall suddenly turned into a brisk gliding, accompanied by the cold wind, and the girl grinned. Wind wings, really fun. In Dr. Granger's house, Hermione stayed alone in the room. At this time, her room was empty, with nothing but furniture, as if she had just experienced a move. But in fact, she was just trying out the capacity of her Christmas gift, the beaded wallet. The whole room is packed in, and there is still so much space in it. The little witch looked at the palm-sized wallet in front of her and fell into joyful troubles. How much can be put in it? While the little wizards were enjoying the holidays and the joy of giving each other Christmas gifts, some of them could only stay alone in the dim room. 10 people were plotting a conspiracy. This room was dark and mysterious. The towering python stone pillars solemnly supported the dark green ceiling, making the whole space filled with a mysterious atmosphere. The faint light shone through the gaps in the curtains, casting mottled shadows, like ghosts hidden in the dark forest. In this shadow, there were 2 crucibles. In front of the crucible, a wizard in a black robe was concentrating on brewing a potion. The flames under the crucible flickered, bringing a touch of warmth to the slightly deserted room. As the potion gradually boiled, the black-robed wizard gradually revealed a greedy expression. The potion in the crucible on the left exuded a milky white luster, which was the legendary elixir of life. However, it was only a semi-finished product, lacking the most important catalyst, that is, the Philosopher's Stone. Only by adding the Philosopher's Stone can the potion complete the final transformation. As long as the Philosopher's Stone can be obtained, the elixir of life can be made. After drinking this elixir of life, Voldemort will be reborn and have a complete body. This is the miracle he has dreamed of for 10 years. In the crucible on the right, the potion is bubbling slowly like a sticky mud, pregnant with some evil power. This potion has been brewed, but to exert its ultimate effect, some special small items need to be added. Quirrell, you need to get that thing from Snape as soon as possible. Voldemort's voice was cold and majestic. Yes. Master. Quirrell knelt on the ground in fear and responded with a trembling voice. Let's go and see our hibernating friend. Quirrell stood up tremblingly, full of excitement and a little timidity, and walked towards the depths of the room. He never thought that he, a Ravenclaw, would come to Slytherin's secret room. This is the room that Slytherin left for his successor. He slowly walked to the depths of the secret room, and a towering statue came into view, towering into the sky, almost touching the ceiling. The statue depicted an old monkey face, with long beards that almost reached the hem of the stone wizard's robes. 2 large gray feet stood firmly on the mirror-like floor, as if they would step forward at any time. Voldemort stared at the statue, muttering something, calling devoutly in his hissing Parseltongue, "Speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of the 4 giants of Hogwarts." As soon as the voice fell, Slytherin's huge stone face seemed to be injected with life, and his mouth slowly opened, getting bigger and bigger, and finally turned into a bottomless black hole. Quirrell climbed the statue carefully and got into the mysterious black hole. There was another world inside the cave, a beautifully decorated room, with emerald gems dotted on the walls, emitting a faint and mysterious light. In this dim light, a huge basilisk curled up quietly in the corner. It was originally silent in hibernation, but now it seemed to feel the wizard's call and twisted its body slightly. Voldemort stared at the long-lost basilisk with a complex emotion in his eyes. They haven't met for nearly half a century. Back then, Tom, who was only 16 years old, stepped into this forbidden area and saw this basilisk here, as well as a lot of knowledge left by Slytherin. It was here that he crossed the threshold of black magic and stepped into the highest realm. It was also here that Voldemort first glimpsed the secret of Horcruxes and the method of making Horcruxes. Just imagine, if a 16-year-old boy had no external guidance, how could he have the desire for immortality? At that time, the only one who accompanied him was this basilisk. It can be said that it witnessed the rise and transformation of the young Voldemort with its own eyes. Voldemort gently stroked the basilisk, and his noseless face was full of vicissitudes and revealed deep memories. "When I am reborn, you will be free again." His cold voice echoed in the secret room. After the Christmas celebration, the Hogwarts holiday is about to come to an end. Before leaving, Yida revealed the simplest part of the intelligent core technology to Niko. This kind of knowledge from God, Ting has only a partial understanding of it so far, and it will take a long time to fully understand it. Therefore, he simply took out a part of it and asked Niko to help study it together. Niko didn't know the source of this technology, and thought that Ting had some genius idea again. After seeing it, he was immediately shocked. The technology of intelligent core is superficially to research a core with stronger computing power for man-made objects such as clockwork mechanisms, but the real purpose is to give man-made objects real life. The creation of life is a taboo knowledge, whether in Teyvat or in the Harry Potter world. When Niko mentioned this, Ting snorted. "Who said magic can't create life?" Speaking of this, Ting had a disdainful smile on his face. "Don't be blinded by the narrow definition of those ignorant people. You know, the things in the books are all the bread chewed by our predecessors. We must have our own understanding. At least, there is a big man in the Teyvat world who can create life with magic." Ting continued, "In my opinion, our magic is essentially a kind of miracle. And the so-called miracle is to turn the impossible into the possible, right? As long as we find the key to the possible, there is nothing we can't do." Niko deeply agrees with Ting's opinion. So, the two of them just walked off this collaborative research project. Then, Ting left Niko's manor. Hepburn personally drove the Citroën DS19 and sent Ting back to the UK. The day before school started, Ting met up with Hermione, Susan, and Jean Chio at platform 9 3/4 and boarded the express train to Hogwarts. Sitting in the carriage, Susan asked shyly, "Ting, did you receive the gift I sent you when you were in France?" "Yes." Ting nodded and raised his hand. "Look, I'm still wearing it now." Seeing that Hermione and Jean Chio both looked at him the same way, he smiled. "Don't worry, I will eat well with that chopstick. As for Hermione's book, I'll use it to kill time this semester." Yida didn't plan to use the system to collect this set of Encyclopedia Britannica. Although it was more convenient to master knowledge this way, it was a gift from a little girl after all, and he didn't want to be swallowed by the system. It would be better to stay and kill time in the history of magic class. However, Hermione seemed to see through his little thoughts and warned, "Don't take the book to the history of magic class." She thought for a while and added, "Also, it's not allowed in the defense against the dark arts class." I know. Ting waved her hand a little. "When the time comes, I will use transfiguration to change the cover. Can you, a little girl, still see it?" Just then, Susan's sharp eyes found the point. Ting, who gave you this scarf?" In order to knit gloves for Ting, she specially studied knitting techniques, and naturally knew what kind of stitches were knitted by ordinary people. Seeing that the atmosphere in the carriage was a little wrong, Yi Jian immediately changed the subject. "That was given to me by a friend. I took it out because I thought it was of good quality." He coughed dryly, "But none of that matters. I want to know more. Are you satisfied with my gift?" "I like it very much." Hermione took out her beaded wallet and took out a large stack of books from it, her face full of joy. "This way, I can read anytime, anywhere." Sure enough, this small bag immediately became a mobile library in her hand. Ting asked herself, "Look at you, don't tell me you've been reading books all holiday, right?" Hermione showed a matter-of-fact expression. "I don't want you to use it too far." Susan and Jean Chio also praised the gift. Jean Chio even excitedly shared her experience of gliding with the wind wing. "With this, I can try some difficult flying skills with more confidence, and I don't have to worry about falling down." Episode 94. A pen, a lamp, a night, a miracle. Afterwards, the conversation in the carriage gradually turned to their respective holiday experiences. The girls spent most of their time at home, and what they shared were some warm and ordinary moments of life. Ting enthusiastically told them what he saw and heard at Niko's house, which made them amazed again and again. "I didn't expect Mr. Niko to be such a great wizard." Jean Chio felt a little incredible. "But," Hermione asked with her usual sharpness, "if Mr. Niko is really so great, why have I never seen his name in modern magic history books?" Of course, Ting smiled and revealed the answer. Because Mr. Niko is not a person of our time, he was famous in the magic world more than 100 years ago. As he said, Ting took out the magic history textbook and showed Hermione and others about Niko's account. The exaggerated description surprised the girls. They didn't expect that there were people in this world who could live for more than 600 years, from the Middle Ages to the present. At the same time, they were also very happy for Ting, who could interact with such people on an equal footing. Ting also admired him more. Unconsciously, this boy had reached the height that they desperately looked up to. As the train returned to Hogwarts, several people spent the last night of the holiday in the castle. The next day, the new semester's courses arrived as scheduled. The first priority of the first class was to collect holiday homework. In the first Transfiguration class after returning to school, many little wizards were in trouble. "Miss Abbott, did you forget to bring your holiday homework?" Professor McGonagall stared at Hannah sharply. "Go back to the dormitory to get it now, I can wait for you." "Oh, you mean you forgot it at home?" Professor McGonagall seemed to have anticipated this situation. She stretched out her hand and waved, and an elf flew in from the window and landed on Hannah's desk. "Now, send a letter to your family immediately and ask them to send your homework as soon as possible." Professor McGonagall quickly blocked all possible excuses with a skilled speed. "Don't try to tell me that there is no one at home, or that you hid your homework in a mysterious corner and your family can't find it. If you can't find it, it means you didn't write it, understand?" Professor McGonagall is indeed a veteran professor. Hannah's excuse, which she had carefully thought of for several days, was so vulnerable in front of her. If Hannah knew a few senior wizards, she might not be so arrogant. You know, the professors of Hogwarts basically grew up in Hogwarts, and the little tricks of the little wizards were all left over from their play. Professor McGonagall tightened her lips and walked towards the next victim. She raised her eyebrows slightly, with a bit of teasing in her tone. "Ms. Parkinson, did you happen to forget your homework at home?" Pansy Parkinson looked at Hannah's miserable condition, and saw the storyteller, the row of owls standing on the stage, were already frightened. She had no choice but to confess, I forgot to write." "Why didn't you forget to eat and breathe?" Professor McGonagall's face darkened. "Have you done all the homework for other classes?" Yes. Yes. Pansy replied in a low voice. "Oh? You just forgot to do my Transfiguration homework, right?" Professor McGonagall raised an eyebrow, with a bit of anger in her tone. "Ms. Parkinson, do you think Transfiguration is not worth learning?" No, Professor McGonagall." Pansy's voice trembled slightly, not like the arrogant lion dog on weekdays. "Next time you can forget to do homework for other subjects, but you are not allowed to forget Transfiguration." Professor McGonagall shouted. "Now, rewrite a homework immediately, and you are not allowed to eat if you don't finish it. Hurry up." Pansy's face fell as if she had been struck by a bolt from the blue. After severely criticizing the Hufflepuff and Slytherin students, Professor McGonagall slowly walked to Neville from Gryffindor. Neville blushed, looked bitter, and said in a trembling voice, "Professor McGonagall, I also forgot to bring my homework, but I'm not sure if I forgot it at home or in the dormitory." He didn't even remember whether he had done his homework. Professor McGonagall glanced at him lightly and said calmly, "Your grandmother has sent your homework directly to me, Longbottom. She seems to feel more at ease doing so." Neville breathed a sigh of relief, raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, and the big stone in his heart finally fell. At this moment, Harry and Ron hurried to the classroom. They stood at the door and said apologetically, "Sorry, Professor, we are late." It's not surprising that the two of them were late. They were busy being detectives throughout the holiday and completely threw their homework out of the window. Fortunately, Ting and his friends returned to school in time last night, and Harry decisively purchased the homework service of the Wanyu shop, which avoided the embarrassing situation. Then, it was the classic one pen, one lamp, one night, one miracle. However, because they spent too much time on homework, they overslept in the morning without any surprise. Professor McGonagall took the homework from them, checked it carefully, and allowed them to enter the classroom. In the whole college, only the students of Ravenclaw almost all handed in their homework on time. It can only be said that there is no harm without comparison, so other colleges were deducted several copies by Professor McGonagall in the first class. After class, Hannah, Pansy, and a group of little wizards were ruthlessly left in the classroom by Professor McGonagall, and they were doing their homework with sad faces. When Ting passed by outside the classroom, they all cast eager eyes on him, as if they wanted him to save them. However, Ting could only shrug helplessly, indicating that he was powerless. Last night, they had a chance to avoid this disaster. Who told them not to spend money? You know, the Wanyu shop distributed a lot of homework resources in the 4 colleges last night. As long as you are willing to spend a few sickles, you can copy them. If they are willing to spend a galleon, Ting can also provide them with automatic feather pen copying services. This feather pen, which he personally improved, can not only copy automatically, but also has a magical weight reduction function, so even plagiarism is difficult to detect. But now, Ting does not have the courage to sell illegal services in front of Professor McGonagall. After leaving the classroom, Ting's sight was attracted by the figure in the corridor. It was a tall girl, leaning against the wall elegantly, holding a book in her arms, and looking at the scenery in the distance. The surrounding students cast envious and admiring eyes, but did not dare to disturb one of the recognized beauties of Ravenclaw College. Because she is also a female prefect. Penelope noticed Ting's arrival, turned lightly, and walked side by side with him in the corridor. She whispered, Ting, did you receive my Christmas gift? Yes, here. Ting gently raised her chin, revealing a corner of the scarf. I always carry it with me. A trace of joy flashed across Penelope's eyes, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Great, this scarf is made from the precious silk of the eight-eyed spider. She said shyly, actually, this is the first time I've knitted a scarf for someone else. I used to knit it for myself, so my craftsmanship may be just average. Listening to Penelope's words, Ting smiled slightly. This girl was quite bold when she flirted with him in the car, but when she started to really do it, she couldn't help but worry about gains and losses. However, Ting knew that Penelope's family was not well off, and she must have spent a lot of money to buy spider silk to knit a scarf for him. No, I like it very much. Ting's smile was as warm as the sun, which made Penelope's heart beat faster involuntarily, and she was a little absent-minded for a while. After a long time, she came back to her senses and asked softly, by the way, Percy told me that he heard from his brother that you rescued a unicorn before the holiday. She hurriedly added, Percy took the initiative to tell me, I didn't go to him to chat. So, how is the unicorn now? Its injuries have basically recovered. If you are interested, I can take you to see it another day. Ting said. The two chatted for a few words in the corridor before saying goodbye. It was dinner time, and Ting and a few girls had just finished their meal and were chatting at the table. The twin brothers found Ting with great interest, and wanted to show him the newly developed joke props with a mysterious look on their faces, and also planned to discuss whether it was worth adding it to the product list of the one you shop. Have you opened the gift we gave you? George asked Ting, curiously. Of course not. Ting said as a matter of course, who knows what you put in it? I know. Fred sighed, our pranks always don't work on you, which is really disappointing. But this time, the little thing we made is really interesting. Woohoo, isn't it? As George said, he stuffed a toffee into his mouth, and then showed Ting his big tongue that had expanded several times. Looking at the way he spoke, it was as if he had a thick meat pillar in his mouth. Fat tongue toffee can make your tongue swell suddenly. Fred explained beside him. Ask for flowers. Then, they enthusiastically invited Jean-Chio and Susan to try, but the girls waved their hands to refuse. None of them liked the feeling of holding a big meat pillar in their mouths, thinking that it was not very elegant. Just then, Harry and Ron hurried over. Ting, so you are here. We have searched the library. Harry said in surprise. Why, do you want to talk to me? Harry looked around and confirmed that everyone present was his own people. His expression became solemn and he asked in a deep voice, Ting, have you heard of Monk Flamel? Ting was slightly stunned. Without Hermione's help, the two of them actually found Niko's information? It seems that they had a very fulfilling Christmas. He did not answer directly, but asked, where did you know this name? Hagrid accidentally let it slip. Harry explained, before school started, Hagrid and I went to the vault to help Dumbledore get something, and it happened that Gringotts was robbed. Later, Hagrid mentioned that the thing he took was from Niko Flamel. Ron couldn't wait to ask, who is Niko Flamel? You haven't told us yet. Harry also looked at Ting curiously, trying his best not to pay attention to Jean-Chio next to Ting. Ting looked at Hermione in surprise, you are all Gryffindor, didn't you tell them? Harry and Ron's eyes also turned to Hermione. 0. Hermione's cheeks flushed slightly, and she defended, I thought this was a secret between us. Harry and Ron widened their eyes and asked in unison, do you know Nicholas Flamel? Of course I do. Jean-Chio turned around and explained with a smile, Ting has been communicating with Mr. Flamel for a long time, and he even visited his home this holiday. Well, we can barely be considered friends. Ting added. Well, since this matter can be told to them. Since this matter is no longer a secret, Hermione just used her skills to explain Nicholas Flamel's identity and background, as well as his series of achievements, to Harry and Ron in detail. I said it was the Philosopher's Stone. It must have been Hermione who asked Dumbledore to keep it for him, because they were friends, and Hermione must have noticed that someone was eyeing the Philosopher's Stone. That's why he quickly moved the treasure from Gringotts to Hogwarts. Harry said firmly. Then we have to find a way to protect the Philosopher's Stone. On Halloween, Quirrell released the trolls to cause trouble. It's obvious that he wanted to take the opportunity to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Ron said anxiously. He guessed, think about it, the Philosopher's Stone can turn metal into gold. With it, it's like holding a mountain of gold. No wonder Quirrell is also staring at it. Who can resist such temptation? As he said this, Ron's face showed envy and desire, as if he was already in a mountain of gold and silver. Old man Nicholas Flamel is so lucky. He sighed. If I can get the Philosopher's Stone, I will buy a quidditch team and be my own boss. It must be like this. Harry frowned and said worriedly, if Quirrell, that bastard, gets the Philosopher's Stone, it will be all over. Ting listened to their discussion and couldn't help feeling a little funny. Shouldn't the most important function of the Philosopher's Stone be to make people immortal? These people have their heads full of gold. Harry, don't forget that Professor Dumbledore is still in school. With him around, no one can do anything under his nose. Speaking of this, Ting looked at Harry with a smile, or do you think it would be safer to put the Philosopher's Stone in your hands? When reading the original book, Ting couldn't figure it out. Obviously, Dumbledore was there, why did Harry always worry about the safety of the Philosopher's Stone? It's okay to worry. After discovering the problem, he always chose to solve it himself instead of telling the professor and the principal. Is it so difficult to rely on a more reliable person? Or is it that in Harry's heart, only he himself is the most reliable? Harry was stunned and waved his hands hurriedly. No, that's not what I mean. 17. He smiled awkwardly, knowing that his thoughts were indeed a bit naive. Ting's words were like a basin of cold water, instantly extinguishing his anxiety. Yes, with Dumbledore here, why should I worry about it? Thinking of this, Harry breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed completely. Episode 95, Love Potion and Chocolate. Seeing that many people gathered around, Ting suddenly thought of the pile of chocolates in his bag. He didn't plan to eat them, so he took them all out and invited everyone to share. Fred smiled maliciously, look at the packaging, these are actually your Christmas gifts, right? Then we won't be polite. Ting smiled and nodded, motioning Harry and Ron to come and finish these chocolates. Ron picked the largest chocolate cake without hesitation and ate it up voraciously. In order to catch up with the summer homework, he spent half of his pocket money, and now he planned to eat it back. Harry picked up a piece of chocolate frog and took a bite. The rich sweet fragrance overflowed in his mouth. Then he realized that many people present didn't move their mouths at all. So many chocolates, are you really not going to try them? Harry asked Jean-Cho carefully. No. Jean-Cho snorted, and she felt dazzling when she saw these chocolates. Susan had the same idea. It's not that she doesn't like sweets, but the source of chocolate makes her unhappy. Hermione even got up with her bag. Hermione, you're not going to the library now, are you? Ting asked in confusion. The other people also looked at her in surprise. Yes, the library is empty now, it's a good time to study. The girl pouted and asked Ting in return, do you want to go with me? Ting smiled bitterly and waved her hand, I'd better forget it. I studied enough with Niko before, and now I'm a little tired. I want to take a break today. But there's only one semester left before the final exam. Hermione said in a matter-of-fact tone, I have to start making a review plan now, otherwise I will be in a mess. Making a study plan a semester in advance, is this Miss Granger? It's so scary. Hermione looked around again and asked for other people's opinions, do any of you want to go to the library with me? Or, forget it. Susan hesitated for a moment, and finally shook her head. Although she is more studious now than before, she can't stand Hermione like this. We won't go either. Harry quickly expressed his opinion, and at the same time picked up a beautifully packaged chocolate crucible. He still prefers to enjoy chocolate here rather than studying in the library. After saying that, he looked at Ron, who had been silent all the time. Ron, you shouldn't go either, right? Ron was silent, and an indescribable confusion appeared on his face. Harry! This sudden shouting made several people around him startled involuntarily. Why are you so loud? Ron's face flushed, and his voice trembled a little. Harry, I really can't stand it, my whole body is as hot as being roasted by fire. You are wearing a cold-proof badge and such a thick sweater, of course you will feel hot. Harry frowned, why don't you just take off your clothes? No, it's not like that. Ron shook his head anxiously, holding Harry's hand tightly, his breathing getting heavier. I feel a force accumulating in my lower abdomen, but I can't release it. Harry, help me. The innocent little Harry didn't understand what Ron meant, and was a little at a loss for words by his friend's sudden situation. How can I help you? Do you want to go to the bathroom? He looked at Ron's rosy face, and an inexplicable worry surged in his heart, thinking that he was sick. It's not going to the bathroom. Ron retorted loudly, it's the body heat, do you understand? And my heart, it seems to be ignited by something, restless, like a wild horse running away from its reins. George frowned and looked at his brother worriedly. Ron, are you okay? I'm fine. Ron took a deep breath and tried to calm his excitement. It's just that I can't see her, and I feel something wrong with my whole body. Fred whistled. Oh? Our little Ron also has a girl he likes? Yes. Ron smiled happily, as if immersed in beautiful memories. She is really beautiful. I want to hold her and fly to the horizon together. George's curiosity was completely aroused. Ron, who is this girl you are talking about? Millicent Bulstrode. Ron blurted out. Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and their eyes were all focused on Ron. George pondered for a moment and slowly said, Millicent? Well, I remember her. She is a frequent customer of our store and has a wealthy family. However, she is a Slytherin after all. Ron, you have never liked Slytherin, and are you sure you really like Millicent? Although George did not directly mention Millicent's appearance, everyone present knew it. Millicent was tall and strong, and looked like a female demon. In short, she was the kind that we Muslims could not look at. It was really strange that Ron had feelings for Millicent. Ron seemed a little uneasy. He muttered to himself, I feel very complicated now. I feel excited and scared, excited and happy. My feelings for her are too deep, as if they are about to overflow. Ron, do you know what you are saying? Harry interrupted him angrily. You didn't know her before, and I never saw you have any communication. Is there something wrong with your brain? I am sober, Harry. Ron took a deep breath and said solemnly, I am telling you seriously that I am in love with her. This is such a joke. Harry turned his head away in disdain. Stop it, okay. However, before Harry finished speaking, he also changed his punch. He staggered a few steps before he stabilized his body and turned his head back angrily. Ron had already retracted his fist, staring at you with a sullen face, as if he wanted to punch again. What? Harry Potter, do you also want to snatch a woman from me? Ron roared, his eyes almost spewing fire. I will never let you go. At this moment of tension, Ting calmly waved his hand. Bind. A stream of water emerged out of thin air and quickly turned into a long rope to tie Ron tightly to the chair. This is his new method, elemental transformation, or the ability to change form, from Tartaglia's Eye of God. Ron is under the influence of aphrodisiac. Ting said helplessly. Where did this love potion come from? Fred frowned. Is it from these chocolates? Hermione quickly picked up a box of open chocolates from the table, with Millicent Bulstrode's name clearly written on it. She looked at Ting with a smug smile on her face. See, I said I shouldn't make this stuff for them, they still find a way to send it to you. Now something went wrong? Ting spread his hands helplessly and sighed. I'm not the only place where you can buy love potions. But don't eat these chocolates, so as not to cause trouble again. No need for Ting to say more, the twins and Harry had already put down the chocolates in their hands with lingering fear. Although the people who came to Ting to order love potions were all rich Slytherin ladies, and there were also some good-looking ones among them, but as Ting said, he was not the only place in the world where love potions could be bought. If the love potion came from a beautiful girl, it would be fine, but if there was another Millicent, or even if it was a boy, considering that this was Britain, this situation was not impossible. Thinking of this, they shuddered involuntarily, and felt their anus tighten at the same time. As for Ting, he had already thought of a way to deal with it. He planned to recycle these chocolates, melt them all, and separate the components of the love potion. If there were any more little witches who came to him to buy love potions, he would sell them again. He was going to give all the remaining chocolate solution to the system. The collection system can swallow up the collections that do not meet the standards and reward useful things. It can be regarded as a large recycling bin. What should Ron do now? Harry asked anxiously, holding his ear that was still aching. Ting calmly took out a small bottle from his pocket and gently sucked a few drops of green liquid with a dropper. The antidote is here, he said concisely. Harry hurriedly took the dropper and carefully dripped the antidote into Ron's mouth. It took a long time for Ron to recover. A trace of fear flashed across his face, as if he had just escaped from a nightmare. Harry looked at him and tried to ask in a relaxed tone, "Are you back to normal?" Ron was a little confused. "What happened to me just now?" "You just accidentally took the love potion." Ting explained concisely and handed him a peacock blue potion bottle. "This is a joy potion. Drinking 2 drops can calm your emotions." Although Ron was still frightened, he took the potion bottle with shaking hands. He took a deep breath, raised his head, and drank it all, trying to wash away the uneasiness just now. Then, the fear on his face gradually dissipated, replaced by an expression of almost ecstasy. "Did I take the love potion? Haha, that feeling is really wonderful." He laughed, as if the experience just now was just a game. Suddenly, he turned to Harry and said with a smile, "Harry, did I hit you just now?" "You can hit me back, I will never fight back, it doesn't matter if you hit me in the face." When he said this, Ting clearly saw a trace of impatience on his face. Harry was speechless when he heard this. He really had never seen such a cheap request. After returning to Hogwarts, Ting finally lived a fulfilling and stable campus life again. Every day, I went to class with Hermione or Susan, and after class, I went to the room of requirement to do research. From time to time, I wrote letters to communicate with Nicholas Flamel. When I had time, I taught a few companions potions and alchemy to complete the orders of the Universal Shop. I participated in quidditch training with Jean Chio 3 times a week. Life was very fulfilling. The little flower bud had grown to the size of a bathtub under Ting's constant watering. The balcony of the dormitory could not accommodate it at all, so Ting had to put it in the room of requirement. The unicorn gradually recovered its health under Ting's constant care. Although Ting was still not allowed to touch its horn, he was allowed to ride on it for a distance. It was February, and the snow in Hogwarts was gradually melting under the spring breeze. Ting looked at the gradually warming weather outside the window, thinking to himself, "It's time to send the unicorn back to the Forbidden Forest." The weather was bad tonight, just like a huge sin blocking the starry sky. The Forbidden Forest was strangely quiet under the night, with only the night wind passing through the woods, bringing bursts of low whistling sounds. Ting mounted the silver-white unicorn and ran towards the agreed place with ease. When he arrived, there was a sound of hooves in the night, which was a secret signal between him and the centaur Ronan. He immediately whistled in response. There was a rustling sound in the bushes, and soon a red figure emerged from the darkness. "Why did you come just now, Ting?" Ronan patted the leaves on his body and turned his head away with some dissatisfaction. "If it's any later, I'll go back." Ting smiled and said with some apology, "I've been very busy recently, and all kinds of research have piled up. But I'm here now." He looked at Ronan curiously. "Your centaurs have access control like us? You have to check who hasn't returned home at night?" Ronan sighed and explained, "The living habits of centaurs are different from your wizards. Our tribe is small in number, so everyone lives in a group and takes care of each other. Going out at night is risky, so there are rules in the tribe that you can't stay out all night." Ting took out a bulging package from his backpack and handed it to Ronan. The package contained a large bag of the most classic snacks in the wizarding world, 5.14 chocolate frogs. When he first met Ronan, he mentioned that he wanted to eat wizard snacks, especially chocolate frogs. Ting felt that it was a good deal to exchange these snacks for information about the Forbidden Forest. It just so happened that there were quite a few chocolate frogs in his Christmas gifts, but no one dared to eat them, so he just used them to trade with Ronan. "I have marked the location of the unicorn tribe you want on your map." Ronan drew a circle on Ting's map with his finger. Ronan's tone was a little tired. "They migrated many times, and I took a lot of effort to find them. The elders in the family performed divination and finally divined the unicorn's current location. From the looks of it, you are planning to send it home, right?" His eyes fell on the unicorn, and he saw it leaning its head on Ting's body intimately. This scene made Ronan's eyes flash with a hint of surprise. "This is the first time I have seen a unicorn so close to a man. Of course, after all, I saved it." Ting gently patted the unicorn's head with a smug smile on his face. "It's a pity that I haven't found a chance to send it home before." Hagrid's map actually marked the unicorn's territory, but Ting had taken the unicorn there once before and found that it was already empty. Perhaps it was because of Voldemort's attack that they became frightened birds and had to choose to migrate. Later, Ting also asked Hagrid for help, but even Hagrid could not track the unicorn's new habitat. This made Ting very anxious. He was worried about leaving this guy who had just recovered alone in the Forbidden Forest, so he could only ask the centaur for help. Episode 96, Twilight Sparkle's Whereabouts. Ronan unwrapped a piece of chocolate frog and put it in his mouth to taste it carefully. After chewing it for a few times, an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. "TSK, this tastes really good." Then, he skillfully took out the picture of the chocolate frog and carefully kept it. Ronan chewed slowly and chatted, "By the way, have you met Twilight Sparkle in the Forbidden Forest recently? Bane, the fiancé who ran away from marriage?" Ting was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses and shook his head. "I haven't seen her. You centaurs shuttle through the Forbidden Forest all day long and know the art of divination. Even you can't find her, so how can I have the chance to meet her? By the way, why did you suddenly mention her? Did something happen?" the boy asked curiously. Ronan sighed lightly. "Last time we found Twilight Sparkle's traces near the tribe, and we were close to capturing her, but unfortunately she escaped in the end. Now the tribe has made a decision to officially define Twilight Sparkle as a traitor. If he meets Twilight Sparkle again, he will not show mercy and will kill her on the spot." He carefully put away the package and reminded, "You often come to the Forbidden Forest. If you meet Twilight Sparkle one day, remember to remind her to be careful." Ting hugged his arms in front of his chest, turned over and jumped onto the back of the unicorn, and said calmly, "I don't want to interfere in the internal affairs of your centaurs." Ronan sighed again. He looked up at the sky and murmured, "The nebula tonight is dim, as if it is foreshadowing something. Goodbye, Ting, may good luck always be with you." After that, Ronan turned and left, probably to find a hidden place to hide the food. After all, bringing chocolate frogs back to the tribe like this will inevitably attract attention. And Ting rode the unicorn and hurriedly ran away, galloping towards the new habitat of the unicorn. Just like that, Ting rode the unicorn, shuttling through the Forbidden Forest like the wind. They bypassed the winding mountain road and finally arrived at a giant tree forest composed of towering trees of 20 to 30 meters high. Ting gently snapped his fingers 11, and golden ripples spread out, spraying clockwork beetles one by one, flying in all directions. These beetles will help him search for the traces of unicorns. Unicorns are social creatures, usually living together in small groups. Their groups vary in size, ranging from 5 or 6 to more than 10, and they like to live by picturesque lakes. When unicorns act collectively, generally no one wants to provoke them, but perhaps because they have no natural enemies, unicorns act alone to forage in most cases. They only return to their common habitat when they rest. The unicorn under Ting's crotch fell into Voldemort's clutches because of this habit. After returning to the tribe, as long as it is careful and tries to stay with the tribe, it should not encounter danger again. In the giant tree forest, the dense leaves blocked the moonlight, causing darkness under the tree canopy. Suddenly, a rapid sound of horse hooves came from the darkness, breaking the tranquility of the night. Ting looked in the direction of the sound in surprise, and a wave of doubt surged in his heart. Could it be that the unicorn took the initiative to find it? However, the unicorn under his crotch did not show any special reaction. So it seems that it should not be a unicorn. So, who exactly did this horsehoof sound come from? In the Forbidden Forest, the only ones who can make horsehoof sounds are centaurs, besides unicorns. Ronan just met him at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, and this centaur could never be him. However, except for Ronan, most centaurs are hostile to him. The last time Ting met Bane, he aimed his bow and arrow at Zhang Qiu's head soon after they met. With the previous experience, Ting had to be extra careful when he heard the sound of horse hooves again. He jumped off the unicorn's back, signaled it to stay where it was, and then sneaked towards the source of the mysterious sound like a ghost. Although Lynette was not around, Ting was not without the disillusionment spell. Amber's gods I also gave him good stealth skills. However, he still underestimated the sharp intuition of those top centaurs. The centaur's ears moved slightly, as if they caught the slight disturbance in the air, and immediately alerted that someone was approaching quietly from behind. She turned around suddenly, with the bow and arrow in her hand, and a delicate feather arrow was instantly strung. Seeing this, Ting knew that he could no longer hide it, so he strode forward and waved his left hand. Dazzling light trick. Ting did not want to kill the opponent on the spot, so he kept a trick when using Linny's fighting skills. The fire element gathered instantly, as if a thermite bomb had exploded in front of the centaur's eyes, and the hot flames accompanied by dazzling flashes suddenly bloomed in the darkness. The centaur only felt that her eyes were stung, and the white light made her eyes blind, and she couldn't help but shed tears. But relying on the hunter's intuition, she still loosened her fingers, and the bowstring was loosened, and the feather arrow shot towards the enemy like a meteor. At such a close distance, an arrow piercing the heart is almost a foregone conclusion, enough to make the opponent lose the battle in an instant. However, Ting was not afraid, and with a clench of his right hand, a blade made of flowing water condensed out of thin air. Then, he swung his hand casually, and the blade accurately hit the flying arrow. The arrow was deflected by the water blade and inserted diagonally into the mud. Binding. Yi Ting shouted, and the water changed again, turning into ropes, and suddenly wrapped around the centaur in front of him like a spirit snake. The centaur's eyes were stimulated by the strong light and it was difficult to open them. He could only rely on the whistling wind in his ears to judge the enemy situation. She quickly drew the short knife from her waist and slashed violently in the direction of the perceived threat. Unfortunately, the water will flow more if the knife is cut off. The moment the rope was touched by the blade, it turned into liquid again, completely unaffected by the blade. But when the rope touched the centaur's body, it instantly restored its due flexibility and binding force. The centaur was shocked to find that his hands were tightly tied and could not move. Yi Ting took a step forward, and the whole person suddenly disappeared in a puff of smoke. The next moment, Yi Ting teleported to the side of the centaur and punched the centaur in the chest fiercely. He wanted to use this punch to make the opponent lose balance, and then end the fight with a beautiful flying knee. But unexpectedly, the punch hit the centaur, but it was like hitting soft cotton. The soft and elastic fat completely dissolved the punch. Damn, this centaur has no martial ethics and actually prepared such a thick breastplate. Yi Ting had to quickly adjust his strategy. 10 sharp hand knives slashed at the centaur's waist and neck. There was a muffled bang sound, and the centaur fell down and fell unconscious. It was not until now that Yi Ting could carefully look at the opponent in front of him. This is a female centaur. The horse part of her body is a beautiful lavender purple, and her long dark blue, purple and rose-red hair and horsetail flutter in the wind. Because of her horse body, although she has the upper body of a girl, her figure is much taller than that of an ordinary girl. This does not make her look majestic, but adds a bit of arrogance. Her face is extremely beautiful, but there is a kind of untamable wildness between her eyebrows. At her throat, a purple gem shines brightly, reflecting charming light. Exquisite ornaments hang on her earlobes, swaying gently as her Yi Ting binds her. In addition, she is also covered with various weapons, sharpened wooden spears, heavy stone hammers, sharp daggers, delicate rope nets, and even a few rusty swords. In short, the number seems to be quite large, but every one of them is garbage. Centaurs generally don't like to wear clothes, but this female centaur is an exception. Her upper body was wrapped in mesh clothing woven from the silk of achromatic giant spiders. Her plump soft flesh was like a heavy grapefruit, as if it could break the rope that bound her at any time. Yi Ting stared at her intently, and became very interested in the body structure of the centaurs. He had studied biology and was curious about the centaurs, a subhuman species that combined the characteristics of humans and horses. Logically speaking, the centaurs did not look like creatures that could evolve naturally. There was a golden section anatomical diagram of the centaurs in the Hogwarts library, which was modeled after the great alchemist Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. In that diagram, the centaur's body structure was both wonderful and complex. They had the human chest cavity and the horse's abdominal cavity, separated by a thick diaphragm. Their lungs were longer, their digestive systems were bloated, and they retained the 12 pairs of ribs of humans and the 18 pairs of ribs of horses. Even more amazing was that they had 2 hearts and 2 sets of lactation systems. But there was only so much information, and the wizard's understanding of the centaurs was too limited. This lack of understanding caused a gap between the 2 races. And now, there was a living centaur in front of Yi Ting, and he suddenly had the idea of using her for in-depth research. Of course, this was really just pure academic research. He just wanted to enhance the wizard's understanding of the centaurs, without any other distractions. Yi Ting thought that this was a noble act that was free from vulgarity. Besides, this centaur attacked him as soon as they met. Obviously not a good centaur. Obviously not a good person. So, it wouldn't be too much for Yi Ting to do something bad to her? Just as Yi Ting was struggling with his heart and wondering whether to take action, the female centaur gradually woke up from her coma. After a brief confusion, her eyes quickly became sharp and bright, and then she was surprised to find that she was not blind and her vision had returned to normal. But her body was tightly bound by the ropes, condensed by the water flow, unable to move. At this time, a young wizard riding a unicorn looked her up and down with a look that made her feel uncomfortable. "Are you finally awake?" Yi Ting took 2 steps closer, twisted her neck leisurely, and then leaned over to look at her. "Tell me, why did you attack me?" The female centaur took a deep breath and defended, "I didn't intend to attack you, wizard. My arrow was just aimed at your cloak." Hearing this, Yi Ting nodded secretly. Indeed, when the arrows came, he could tell that the arrows would not really hit him. "I heard that you stopped a black wizard in the Forbidden Forest before, right?" The centaur continued, "My people all praised you for your extraordinary strength. I just wanted to test your skills." "Really, I swear in the name of the leader." Yi Ting rolled his eyes disdainfully. From her purple fur, he had already seen through her identity. She was Twilight Sparkle, the female centaur who escaped from the tribe. You are a guy wanted by the tribe, and now you swear in the name of Mager. What's the difference between this oath and fart? But since Twilight Sparkle was someone Ronan asked him to take care of, Ting didn't intend to really do anything to her. He waved his hand and untied the magic that bound Twilight Sparkle. Don't attack wizards casually next time, it's dangerous. Ting warned. Thank you, you are such a kind and good wizard. Twilight Sparkle said with sincere gratitude. By the way, I heard that some dark wizards would have evil thoughts when they met centaurs and wanted to capture them for research. You didn't have such thoughts just now, did you? Thinking of Ting's strange eyes just now, Twilight Sparkle asked tentatively. Ting coughed lightly, her face full of righteousness. I absolutely don't have such thoughts. I swear in the name of my best teacher Tom Riddle, Miss Twilight Sparkle. You know my identity. Twilight Sparkle suddenly felt embarrassed. She had pretended for a long time before, but this little wizard knew everything. Did Ronan ask you to come here to find me? Twilight Sparkle suddenly remembered something and asked, staring into Ting's eyes. Ting frowned and quickly denied, I don't know Ronan. Relax, Ting. Twilight Sparkle comforted softly, Ronan told me that you were looking for a new habitat for unicorns. He didn't know the exact location, but I found this area through divination and told him. Did you tell him? Ting raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, what is the relationship between you and Ronan? Why did he help you so much? We don't have any special relationship. Twilight Sparkle shook her head and said, Ronan just doesn't want to see me suffer misfortune, so he asked me to come to you, hoping to make a deal with you, just like he did with you. Ting stared at Twilight Sparkle and said, do you know what Ronan and I traded? Although I don't know the specific content of your transaction, I can assure you that I can do what Ronan can do, and even do better. Twilight Sparkle's words revealed full of confidence. Ting asked with interest, Ronan wants chocolate frogs. You are not interested in this too, are you? Of course there is more than that. Twilight Sparkle said seriously, I escaped from the centaur tribe and brought almost nothing of value. I want to exchange for some practical supplies now. Oh? What do you want to exchange? Ting asked curiously. Weapons and survival supplies. Twilight Sparkle answered without hesitation. Ting leaned back slightly, glanced at Twilight Sparkle, and frowned slightly. With your ability, you should be able to survive in this forest with only the bow and arrow in your hand, right? Indeed. Twilight Sparkle smiled, and a heroic arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. But these alone are not enough for me to hunt centaurs. The picture shows Twilight Sparkle. Episode 97, Pua Master, Hunting Centaurs? Hearing this request, Ting couldn't help but hesitate. Although he didn't like centaurs very much, he always maintained the attitude of lawful neutrality and didn't want to favor any side. If he provided weapons and supplies to Twilight Sparkle, wouldn't it mean that he had changed his position? Once discovered by the centaurs, he would probably be hostile and attacked by them. He looked at the centaurs in front of him, pondered for a moment and asked, tell me in detail, what can you provide for me? My bow and arrow will fight for you. Twilight Sparkle raised her head proudly, although I am not as strong as the male centaurs in the tribe, I can proudly say that my archery skills are unmatched among the centaurs. As long as you need, my bow and arrow are ready to attack you at any time. Is that so? Ting nodded, and then Twilight Sparkle saw a golden ruby in Ting's hand. The boy didn't do anything, and the golden ruby melted like flowing water, and then turned into a golden bow. Do you see that tree? Ting pointed forward. Twilight Sparkle looked in the direction of his hand and found a dry tree with 2 yellow leaves growing alone on it. Then, Ting squeezed his feet and rode his unicorn in the opposite direction in front of Twilight's astonished eyes. After running for about 100 meters, Ting suddenly turned around, pulled the golden bow, and 2 feather arrows appeared on the bowstring. Without seeing how Ting aimed, the 2 arrows were fired at the same time. Twilight Sparkle watched the 2 arrows draw 2 beautiful arcs that were almost parallel, and then hit 2 yellow leaves almost at the same time. This is Amber's specialty, 1 arrow hits 2 hills. Twilight Sparkle was dumbfounded. She never thought that a little wizard could have such archery skills. How is it, can you centaurs do it? Ting rode the unicorn back to Twilight Sparkle and asked slowly. Although his tone was very calm, it sounded like an unspeakable mockery to Twilight. The female centaur shook her head. What a joke, this kind of archery is not something that ordinary people can use. You know, for ordinary archers, it is already amazing to be able to shoot accurately within 50 meters. The Olympic archery target is 70 meters, but that is completely out of actual combat, and can only be achieved by shooting at the same target for many years. And Ting not only hit the target from 100 meters away, but also did it on a unicorn running at high speed, turning his head to shoot. Of course, even so, Twilight felt that she could barely do it. After all, they were born with 2 pairs of horse hooves, and riding and shooting is their talent. But what Ting did now was to shoot 2 arrows at the same time and ensure that both arrows hit. Twilight racked her brains, but couldn't figure out how he did it. Even if she practiced archery from the womb, it wouldn't work. "Mr. Ting, how did you develop such archery skills?" the female centaur couldn't help asking. "Just practice casually." Ting changed the golden bow back to Rui and put it away. "At first, it was just a hobby. I only found out later that I have some talent in this area." "Love, just practice casually." Ting's Versailles speech dealt a heavy blow to Twilight Sparkle. How could such a talent appear in a little wizard? How embarrassed are the centaurs? Seeing Twilight Sparkle's convinced expression, Ting smiled. He did intend to cooperate with the centaurs in front of him, but it was also cooperation, how to cooperate, and who would take the lead, all of which needed to be considered. Even though she was captured, this female centaur named Twilight Sparkle still acted so strongly, which was not the cooperative attitude he wanted. Therefore, Ting chose to show off his skills and suppress Twilight Sparkle's confidence first, so that it would be easier to negotiate. However, this alone was not enough. "Twilight Sparkle, you see, even though I am an excellent archer, in most cases, I prefer to use magic to solve problems. In front of powerful spells, archery, no matter how advanced it is, can only be regarded as a pastime." Ting said lightly, "So, how much value does your archery have for me?" Ting's words made Twilight Sparkle lower her head and fall into deep thought. Yes, the archery of this little wizard is already so outstanding, but in front of more powerful magic, it can only be reduced to a hobby. And her archery is not as good as the other party. How much help can she provide to the other party? Twilight Sparkle pondered in her mind, and suddenly her eyes lit up, and said to Ting, "By the way, my divination ability is not bad, at least better than Ronan. Even among the centaurs, there are few people who can compare with me." Speaking of this, she regained her confidence. "Those centaurs are unwilling to share their divination skills with wizards, but I am willing. As long as you are willing to help, I can tell fortunes for you at any time. No matter what you want to find, I can help you predict it." As if she was afraid that Ting didn't believe it, she couldn't wait to say, "I can tell fortunes for you right now. According to the situation on Mars, Hogwarts will be very peaceful in a short time. But after 2 rounds of moon phases, the light of Mars will shine again." A good fortune teller is always like this, likes to say something vague to maintain mystery. Ting shrugged, "I know this very well. Mars has a small size and a large orbital eccentricity, so its apparent magnitude changes unpredictably and its brightness is unstable. But generally speaking, it presents a periodic change pattern. To be honest, Twilight Sparkle, if you are interested, I can spend a semester to explain basic physics and the law of gravity to you. By the way, I can also teach you how to look at the world from a muggle's perspective." Ting sneered at astrology from the bottom of his heart. He could understand Professor Sprout's prediction. After all, magic, which is beyond the ordinary, always has some special features that cannot be measured by common sense. But how can astrology peek into the future? Isn't Mars brighter because it is closer to the Earth? How can it be a hint of fate? Let him believe in astrology? That is simply a great insult to the education he received in his previous life. Twilight Sparkle shook her head gently and retorted disapprovingly, "Muggles' observation angles are indeed unique, but can they explain the mystery of the birth of the universe? Can they explain the source of the universal gravity you mentioned? Can they explain the origin of all things in the world? If they can't, can you?" Ting raised his eyebrows. "Neither can I," Twilight Sparkle said calmly. "Humans gain knowledge by observing phenomena, and we centaurs also learn through observation. In essence, we are no different." "How dare you say such a pedantic statement?" Ting had no choice but to use facts to ruthlessly break her luck. But in fact, Muggles can really explain these. Ting crossed his arms and began to popularize science for Twilight Sparkle. He started with molecules and atoms, and then talked about quarks, and then jumped to the Big Bang Theory. Then, he explained the theory of relativity and gravity in detail, telling her that gravity is actually just the geometric effect of the curvature of matter on spacetime, etc. In his previous life, Ting only had a vague understanding of these advanced physics theories, but recently he accidentally saw these theories on the Encyclopedia Britannica and studied them carefully. At this moment, he started to learn and apply them in front of Twilight Sparkle. Quarks. Big bang. Riemann metric. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Twilight Sparkle was dizzy after hearing this. She was just an ordinary centaur, and she had never even been to school. How could she understand these things? But after hearing Yi Ting's clear and logical explanation, she had to believe it, as if it really happened. Okay, you win. I admit that muggles understand the universe better than centaurs. Twilight Sparkle hesitated and tried to defend herself. This doesn't mean that centaurs' divination is useless, really? Yi Ting raised his eyebrows suspiciously. Just then, a few clockwork beetles flew back to Yi Ting. Yi Ting let the beetles fly to his hand, sensed the message received by the beetles, and looked up at Twilight Sparkle. Well, now there is an example of unreliable divination. Didn't you predict that the nearest habitat of the unicorn tribe is nearby? Why didn't I see any? That's not right. Twilight Sparkle was shocked when she heard this. I clearly saw a unicorn here yesterday. The voice became smaller and smaller as she said this. Obviously, she was no longer confident. In the end, Twilight Sparkle could only whisper, maybe they have gone deep into the Forbidden Forest. Seeing Yi Ting still looking stern, Twilight Sparkle finally became dejected. Sorry, apart from these, I really don't know what else I can give you. She looked at Yi Ting disappointedly. Since you are unwilling to help me, then for Ronan's sake, I hope you don't tell other centaurs about my situation here. As she said this, she put her bow and arrow on her back and turned to walk deep into the Forbidden Forest. Then, she heard Yi Ting's voice behind her. Wait, where are you going? Where else can I go? Twilight Sparkle's voice was a little sad. I just want to find a more secret place where I won't be found by my tribe. Why do you want to leave now? Yi Ting asked, and who said I don't want to help you? Do you really want to help me? Twilight Sparkle was a little surprised, and then she couldn't believe it. But apart from bows and arrows and divination, I don't have anything to help you with. That's hard to say. Yi Ting rode the unicorn to the female centaur and patted her on the shoulder. To be honest, even if you didn't provide any help, I wouldn't tell other centaurs about you. After all, I've been unhappy with Bane for a long time. Yi Ting said this sincerely. In fact, Yi Hua has always wanted to develop the business of the Wanyu shop among the centaurs. The products of the Forbidden Forest are so rich that Hagrid alone can't collect them all. Relying on Hagrid's map, Yi Ting would come to the Forbidden Forest every now and then, but with his own efforts, the efficiency is still not enough. Recently, in addition to researching the intelligent core, Yi Ting is also mass-producing humanoid clockwork machines, and there is a big gap in materials. He also hopes to use these materials to mass-produce potions and sell them to Diagon Alley to make a fortune in galleons. So, Yi Peng thought of the centaurs. As residents of the Forbidden Forest, the centaurs can completely replace them and collect various materials efficiently. But the problem is, what right does Yi Ting have to drive the centaurs? If this proud race is willing to submit to wizards, it will not end up like this today. What's more, it's already 9119, who still uses the bloody and unpleasant slave system. In terms of driving people, capitalists are much better than slaves. Aren't ordinary muggles sold and count money for them? Yi Ting's plan is to sell the goods of the Wanyu shop to the centaurs. From Ronan's attitude, Yi Ting can see that although the centaurs are very xenophobic, there are still a group of people among them who are willing to accept the goods of wizards. It's a pity that due to the traditional xenophobic centaurs like Bane, the centaurs who are willing to accept new things dare not accept Yi Ting's goods at all. Nua Zhaohao, only Ronan will secretly trade with Yi Ting. And as an outsider, Yi Ting has no excuse to intervene in the internal affairs of the centaurs, so he can only worry. Therefore, if someone can do something against those centaurs' conservatives, Yi Ting will definitely find a way to help. And Twilight Sparkle is obviously such a person. Ronan's attitude shows that most of the moderates within the centaurs are very sympathetic to Twilight Sparkle. Therefore, even if Twilight Sparkle becomes a wanted criminal, they will not actively hunt down female centaurs. And Twilight Sparkle's so-called hunting of centaurs is certainly not aimed at these people. On the contrary, those conservatives will be the most active in hunting down Twilight Sparkle, and they happen to be the common enemy of Twilight Sparkle and Yi Ting. As long as Twilight Sparkle can kill a few more conservatives, the atmosphere within the centaurs will soon change. Twilight Sparkle certainly doesn't know Yi Ting's calculations. Hearing what Yi Ting said, she suddenly felt that although this little wizard is powerful, he is still a good person. She immediately came forward and held Yi Ting's hand. Really? Are you really willing to help me? Because of being too excited, Twilight Sparkle leaned too far forward and almost let Yi Ting's head bury in the cotton. Restraining the desire for facial cleanser, Yi Ting nodded. Yes, Miss Twilight Sparkle. I am happy to help you, and you are not completely unable to help. Really? Twilight Sparkle said in surprise, tell me quickly, I am willing to do anything. Seeing the attitude of the female horseman, Ting nodded with satisfaction. Things have come to this point, his goal is stable. This proud little mare was first suppressed by Ting, and her pride was worn away. Then she transformed into Hubaoui and Ji Shiyu to comfort her. She has already regarded him as a savior. Then, of course, whatever Ting says is what she wants. Episode 98, Ting's big investment. You can hide from the tribe in the Forbidden Forest, so you must know this place well. Ting asked. Of course. The female centaur patted her trembling chest. I dare say that no one in the entire tribe knows every plant and tree in the Forbidden Forest better than me. That's good. Ting was not polite and said directly, I need someone to collect various herbs in the Forbidden Forest for me regularly and hunt precious materials from magical animals. Then how much do you need to collect? Twilight Sparkle asked. Do your best without exposing yourself. Ting was generous at this time, I want more or less. Also, since I can't find the unicorn's tribe, I'll leave it with you. Please take care of it for me. Really, Mr. Ting? Twilight Sparkle was very moved when she heard this, and secretly clenched her fists. You are a good person, don't worry, I won't let you down. Twilight Sparkle is indeed an honest child. After hearing what Ting said, she thought that Ting just wanted to help, but was afraid that the unilateral help would be rejected, so she found an excuse to trade materials. It was the other party who risked defending the centaurs to help, but the boy was keen to consider his own self-esteem when he lent a helping hand. Ronan was right, he was indeed a very good person. Thinking of this, Twilight Sparkle secretly made up her mind, don't worry, benefactor, I will definitely try my best to help you collect materials, and will never let you down. Suddenly being looked at by the female centaur with the eyes of a kind person, Ting was stunned at first, but immediately guessed the other party's thoughts. Well, I just think you are honest, so I don't ask for more, I didn't expect you to be so honest. But Ting saw through it but didn't say it. For an honest child like Twilight Sparkle, this misunderstanding will increase her efforts at work. You know, the work efficiency produced by unwilling work and working from the heart is not at the same level. In order to aggravate this misunderstanding, Ting took out a lot of food on the spot, all of which were foods that could be stored for a long time, such as chocolate, bread, sausages, etc. Afraid that Twilight Sparkle had no place to put these things, Ting took out 2 more pockets made by Space Extension Spell. One is for you to put 387 supplies, and the other is for the collected materials. Ting explained. Twilight Sparkle, who was starving, took a big bite of chocolate. After the sweet taste entered her mouth, she almost cried. I have never eaten such delicious food before. She ate it voraciously and almost choked herself. Take your time, no rush. Ting patted her back. Do you like chocolate very much? If you want to eat, I have plenty here. As he said that, he took out another full stack and stuffed it all into Twilight Sparkle's pocket king. Really, thank you so much, Mr. Ting. Twilight Sparkle didn't know what to say. Ting's handsome face was shining in her eyes. She didn't know that these chocolates of Ting were actually gifts received on Christmas, a hodgepodge after separating the love potion and melting them together. No one eats this thing, so Ting originally planned to destroy it with the system, but now that Twilight Sparkle likes it, he can make use of it. In addition to food, Ting also took out ropes, flints, shovels, canvas, and other necessary supplies for outdoor survival. Originally, he brought them with him for emergency use, but now he gave them to Twilight Sparkle. Ting taught her how to use them one by one, fearing that she didn't understand. The centaurs were too exclusive, so Twilight Sparkle had to learn how to use flint and how to set up a tent. For Twilight Sparkle, she had never come into contact with more novel things in her life than in this one night. This also made her realize how convenient her life was just now. Finally, Ting gave Twilight Sparkle a white tassel spear, a tiger fish knife, and a sharpshooter's oath. Such a good weapon, is it really for me? Twilight Sparkle touched the longbow in front of her, stroked the white tassel spear, and wiped the sharp tiger fish knife. She could see that these weapons were all very sophisticated magic weapons, which must have been made by the best craftsmen and alchemists, and each one was very precious. In their entire tribe, only the leader Major and Bane's uncle each had a magic longbow, which was passed down from their ancestors. But these 2 enchanted longbows combined were not as good as any of these 3 weapons. Ting gave her all 3 weapons, which must have cost him a lot of money. I have a wand anyway, and I don't need this, so I might as well give it to you. Ting shrugged, looking indifferent. But, it's too expensive. Twilight Sparkle still didn't dare to accept it. Just think of it as me lending it to you, Ting sighed. No matter how expensive the weapon is, it can't be more than your life. It's not the Middle Ages now, and there are no wizards like Gryffindor who practice both magic and martial arts. Such enchanted weapons can't be sold at a high price by wizards, so it's better to do a favor for those who need them. Thank you so much, Ting. Twilight Sparkle couldn't hold back her gratitude at all, and rushed forward to hug the boy, pressing him into the pomelo, letting him feel the facial cleanser. Ting felt that it was worthy of being a centaur's pomelo, which was large in size and very solid, and full of experience. After finally regaining his breath, Ting said, in fact, in addition to bows and arrows, my swordsmanship and spearmanship are also good. I can teach you a few tricks when I have time. As we all know, there are no horses in Teyvat. At least the skills that Ting learned from Tartaglia are not used for cavalry combat. But with his talent, it is not impossible to develop a few skills for cavalry combat. Anyway, as a wizard, Ting does not expect Tartaglia's martial arts to play a role. If he teaches Twilight Sparkle, it will not be a waste of money. I just hope that Twilight Sparkle can deal with a few more stubborn conservative centaurs and deal a heavy blow to the conservatives. After seeing Ting's wonderful archery skills of hitting 2 hills with 1 arrow, Twilight Sparkle certainly would not think that Ting's so-called proficiency in swordsmanship and spearmanship was bragging. She immediately expressed sincerely that she would definitely learn well. After everything was settled, Ting put the unicorn down, handed it to Twilight Sparkle, and handed her a badge. Then, I'll give it to you. Take good care of it. Also, if I want to come to you, I will notify you in advance with the badge. If you encounter any danger that you can't solve, you can also use the badge to notify me. Then, I'm leaving. Waving his hand, Ting said goodbye to the female centaur and the unicorn. Seeing Ting leave, the unicorn came forward and reluctantly grabbed the corner of Ting's clothes. But in the end, Ting still left it here with a wolf's heart. In fact, if it hadn't been for the fact that keeping it with Hagrid was not a solution, Ting would not have sent it back to the Forbidden Forest. Wouldn't it be nice to keep such a precious little baby by your side every day to improve your favorability? Even if there was no reward, Ting would actually like to keep a unicorn. Horses are originally beautiful animals, and unicorns are not only doubly beautiful, but also very clean. Who doesn't want to keep a fragrant and soft unicorn? Every time Ting comes to play with the unicorn, Nit will feel jealous. At this time, Ting wants a suitcase similar to Newt Scamander more than ever. That kind of box is simply equivalent to a small portable world. It doesn't matter how many magical animals you raise in it, and you can also grow crops. How great! However, giving the unicorn to Twilight Sparkle is not without benefits. Ting also has one less daily job. He only needs to visit them once a week and bring some supplies to Twilight Sparkle. But as the winter ice and snow completely melted, Ting's attention was soon attracted by other things. That's right, the Quidditch week of this school year is coming again. Ravenclaw will also usher in the first Quidditch game of this school year, and the opponent is Slytherin. If it was last year's Ravenclaw, it would probably be ready to be a send-point baby and directly send Slytherin to the finals. But it's different. Because this year, Yi joined the team. How could Ting tolerate such a thing? He was still thinking about playing a record-breaking high score and making a splash. If Ravenclaw can rush into the finals under his leadership, it will definitely be an unprecedented event. After all, they were a complete underdog team last year. Now on the Quidditch game standings, Gryffindor Academy is the leader, but it is only 40 points ahead of Slytherin, the second place. But this ranking is not the final result, because the schedule is only halfway through, and Ravenclaw has not played any games yet. For Slytherin, this match is a crucial battle for their fate. In their eyes, the real opponent is not Ravenclaw, but the future Gryffindor. Neither Slytherin nor Gryffindor has played against Ravenclaw yet, but the match between Slytherin and Gryffindor has ended. This means that if Slytherin wants to take the Quidditch Cup home, it must win at least 40 points more than the future Gryffindor in the match against Ravenclaw. For both Ravenclaw and Slytherin, this match is a situation where they must do their best to win. So overnight, the friendship between Ravenclaw and Slytherin turned over, faster than turning a book. In the past, the relationship between the two colleges was quite harmonious, especially the existence of Ting, which made Slytherin dare not provoke Ravenclaw too much. But at this time, the hostility between the two sides reached its peak. Ravenclaw seemed to have replaced Gryffindor and became the number one enemy in Professor Snape's eyes. He started to deduct points, like a mad dog. Professor Flitwick was not so shameless, so the whole Ravenclaw house fought hard, actively answered questions, and accumulated points like crazy, just to get the house. Luckily, there were really many top students in Ravenclaw, one of the best in the whole school. Under the leadership of Ting, they withstood the suppression of Slytherin. The captain of the team, Becky, also went crazy and began to follow the example of other teams and conduct iron-blooded special training for Ravenclaw. Zhang Qiu also seized the time to practice with Ting. In order to ensure the team's victory, Ting even gave his Nimbus 2000 to Zhang Qiu and rode the sweeping 10 stars himself. In his opinion, the gap between himself and the opponent's chaser was much higher than the gap between Zhang Qiu and the Slytherin Seeker. And a high-performance broom would be of greater help to the Seeker. On the eve of the game, the common room of Ravenclaw College fell into silence, and all daily activities seemed to be paused. Roger Davis began to wipe his broom over and over again, as if he wanted to make it sparkle and blind the Slytherin students in the game. And Randolph Burrow repeatedly used the stabilization spell to check the performance of the broom, fearing that the Slytherin students would cast some evil spell on her broom behind her back, making her efforts go to waste. Harry almost fell off his flying broom before, which still made everyone feel scared. But Ting felt that if he continued to check like this, his broom would have problems by itself, and no one would need to cast any spells. Professor Flitwick had already appeared in the lounge for the 9th time. He seemed to have Alzheimer's disease, and repeatedly asked Ting if he was sure to eliminate Slytherin. His eyes were full of expectation and anxiety. He was obviously driven by Snape's private sarcasm, and now he just wanted to slap Snape in the face. Even Hermione, who was always calm, put down her books and sneaked into the Ravenclaw lounge to visit Ting. She sat on a stool, picked up Ting's cup, drank a few gulps of water, and said breathlessly, "I can't study. It's too noisy over there. I can't concentrate at all." The students of Gryffindor College were more worried about this game than Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Although they are currently ranked first, this position is not stable and may become second at any time. They are only 40 points higher than Slytherin. As long as Slytherin scores a few more goals, they will be squeezed to second place. And second place means that a year's efforts will be wasted. Therefore, Gryffindor students are looking forward to Ravenclaw's victory and keeping this hard-won first place for them. Ting raised his lips slightly and poured Hermione a cup of tea, indicating that she didn't need to worry. Gryffindor's efforts will of course be in vain. After all, Ting himself also wants to win the Quidditch Cup. In fact, Hermione was not as worried as other Gryffindors. She encouraged Ting, "Then you have to work hard. If you really can't do it, surrender, don't force it." When Gryffindor beat Slytherin, Angelina's mouth was almost crooked by Flint. Ting rolled her eyes helplessly. "Hermione, can't you say something auspicious?" The girl tilted her head, pretending to be in deep thought, and then said seriously, "Well, if your teeth are knocked out, I will let my father fix them for you for free. How about lifetime warranty?" Ting heard this and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then, "Thank your father for his generosity for me." "You're welcome." Hermione grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. The breeze blew by, bringing a hint of the fresh fragrance of shampoo. Ting suddenly reached out and messed up her carefully groomed brown curly hair like a prank, causing Hermione to grumble. Episode 99, Will you win? You will win. On Saturday, the much-anticipated match day finally arrived. When Ting and his Ravenclaw teammates entered the auditorium, thunderous applause surged like a tide, almost lifting the roof off. Students from all colleges looked at them expectantly, praying in their hearts that Ravenclaw must defeat Slytherin. Ting's eyes swept across the crowd, and he saw the Weasley twins leading the applause. "Ting, we must let Slytherin see how powerful we are," Fred shouted loudly. The students of Slytherin College stared at Fred angrily, as if they wanted to kill him before the game started. After dinner, the players left the auditorium and went to the locker room for final preparations. The moment they stepped out of the auditorium, they were once again greeted with applause and cheers like a hero's farewell. In the Ravenclaw locker room, the atmosphere was warm and harmonious. Ting changed into the Quidditch uniform with a blue background and silver edges, and instantly became the focus of his teammates. He greeted his teammates one by one, and everyone responded enthusiastically. The atmosphere of the Ravenclaw Quidditch team is always so harmonious, and the captain Becky is even more unpretentious, always patiently imparting experience to the young players. Of course, it's not that he doesn't want to lose his temper, but he doesn't dare to. After all, there are few boys in the college, and this team is finally assembled. He doesn't want to lose any player because of a momentary impulse. In contrast, the Slytherin team has no such good thing. The veterans there always like to order the newcomers around, and even bullying incidents are reported from time to time, which makes people sweat for those newcomers. Captain Becky raised her hand and signaled everyone to be quiet. He cleared his throat and said loudly, Everyone knows that both Ting and Qiu are participating in the competition for the first time, especially Ting, who is still in the first grade. Come on, everyone, give them some encouragement. The team members immediately applauded, and the chaser Roger blew a loud whistle and cheered, say a few words, say a few words. Qiu raised his broom, with a determined light in his eyes. I will definitely grab the golden snitch before my opponent. Oh. Everyone cheered, and the atmosphere was instantly ignited. Ting seemed much more modest. For me, I win if I don't get hurt. Becky didn't expect Ting to say such soft words. He opened his mouth and could only say, that's right, everyone should be careful of the Slytherin team. They don't have the ethics of playing football, we must not be careless. Becky stretched out his hand, and the team members put their hands on it, with Ting and Qiu's hands on the top. Everyone shouted in unison, Ravenclaw, Ravenclaw. Before leaving, Captain Becky suddenly found Ting. He moved closer and whispered, Ting. I almost forgot, what model of your flying broom is it? Is it a Nimbus 1700 or a Sweep 5 stars? Ting held the flying broom with a smile on his face, Sweep 1 star. Are you kidding me? Samuels, the batsman standing by, widened his eyes in astonishment. This broom is the first-generation product of the Sweep Company. It's older than my grandfather? Ting tilted his head and said, this is the first broom I modified myself. I have developed feelings for it, so I can't bear to throw it away. What kind of nonsense is this? Becky scratched her head and said helplessly, can we ask Madame Hooch to replace the broom now? You can use Qiu's original broom. There are 2 minutes before entering the field. I'm afraid it won't work, Captain. Chaser Roger responded anxiously. Okay, Ting, you don't have any special tactics today, just play to the unique performance of your broom. Becky sighed and prayed in her heart that she would not be slaughtered too badly by Slytherin today. Ting understood instantly that the captain meant to let him play freely. Several people left the lounge together. Becky took the lead in pushing open the door of the locker room and strode towards the Quidditch field, followed by others. Ting carried his old broom and fell at the end of the team. The locker room was silent, but when they walked into the stadium, it was as if the mute button was cancelled instantly, and the entire audience burst into thunderous cheers, surging like a tide, almost piercing the eardrums. The audience had turned into a blue and silver ocean of Ravenclaw, and Slytherin seemed to have offended the public, and the snake green only occupied a corner, shrinking in the corner. Looking around, the blue hats, banners, and billboards in the audience were like stars, scattered in every corner, all of which were masterpieces of Kaiupu. If it were any other game, Slytherin might be able to rely on the power of Krypton Gold to buy the most dazzling banners and billboards to overwhelm the opponent with momentum. But this time was different, the big boss of Wanyupu was now playing in person. Ting used his power for personal gain and privately arranged a lot of props for Ravenclaw to cheer him up. Not only did he have to beat Slytherin in the game, but he also had to outdo Slytherin in the audience. This matter was specifically assigned to Hermione. So now, in addition to various banners with Ravenclaw written on them, there was a huge sign with a handsome animated image of Ting floating above the Ravenclaw and Gryffindor audience seats. In the painting, Ting was riding a broom in the sky, and from time to time he would wink at the showy guy in front of him, causing a group of little witches to scream. Seeing this, Ting couldn't help but smile bitterly. So this is how he is in Hermione's eyes. When the Slytherin Quidditch team appeared, the whole audience burst into huge boos, like a storm, and some students excitedly threw water bottles at them. Snape wore a green ornament on his chest and stood in front of the Slytherin audience with a look of disdain. Whether you can win the game depends on force. Strength. It's not about who looks better. Madame Hooch was squatting in the middle of the field, busy taking out the quaffle and bludger from a big box to prepare for the upcoming game. The early spring sun was high in the sky, and the sunlight was like golden silk, warmly spreading on Ting, coating him with a layer of dazzling brilliance. The boy stretched out his right hand and gently covered his forehead, with confidence in his eyes. Not only was Captain Becky worried about Ting's broom, Qiu looked at him with some concern. Ting, how about I return the Nimbus 2000 to you? Can this Sweep 1 star really be used in the competition? You've ridden this broom before. Ting crossed her arms, you should be very clear about its performance. But, in the competition, you have to consider more than just the flying performance. She pointed out worriedly, the captain is right. Slytherin likes to use foul tactics the most. When they see your Sweep 1 star, they will definitely target you. No matter how much the Sweep 1 star is modified, the core frame is still old. If it is damaged, don't worry, Qiu, who knows who will hit whom at that time. Yi Ting curled his lips and made a strong gesture. If you don't believe me, just touch it. As he said that, he grabbed the girl's hand and touched his chest. Zhang Qiu subconsciously grabbed it and could feel the strong muscle fibers between his fingers, and underneath that, his heart beat vigorously, as if it could bring infinite power. She suddenly felt a kind of reliability within reach, and she wanted to lean directly on the boy's arms. It was not until there were bursts of boos from the stands that the girl suddenly realized that her behavior was wrong. Her cheeks flushed and she quickly withdrew her hand. "Oh, you are annoying." She turned her head and whispered, "Don't do this in public." "So you mean, you can do this in private?" Yi Ting seized the girl's loophole and raised a playful smile at the corner of his mouth. "I didn't say that." Zhang Qiu angrily hit Yi Ting's shoulder, but his eyes flashed with smiles and shyness. The two of them flirting was seen by other players and the captain Becky. They looked at each other and could only smile helplessly. These two newcomers are really bold. They are so presumptuous in public. Roger muttered in a low voice. But what can they say? Stop them? This is obviously an unrealistic idea. After all, the two of them, a chaser and a seeker, have gone through many rounds of selection and defeated countless competitors, even old players, to join the team. They are Professor Flitwick's favorites and perform best in their usual training. Everyone still hopes that the couple can lead the team to win the game. The Ravenclaw team is here. Lee Jordan's voice spread throughout the stadium under the blessing of the spell, and he played the role of commentator as always. Yi Ting, Zhang Qiu, Roger Davis, Jason Samuels, Duncan Ingleby, Randolph Burrow, and Captain Becky. This is undoubtedly the strongest team in Ravenclaw's history. This statement is fair. After all, everyone knows how bad Ravenclaw was before. Although I am a Gryffindor, after watching Yi Ting's selection, I have to admit that he has the potential to become the best chaser in Hogwarts history. Lee praised Yi Ting, but his comments were quickly drowned out by a boo from Slytherin. They are already standing in the middle of the court. "Look, that's the seeker Zhang Qiu, the only girl in their team," Lee shouted loudly. As if being pulled by an invisible thread, everyone's eyes followed Ji's words and looked at the center of the court. Yi Ting and Zhang Qiu's affectionate look was instantly exposed to everyone. There was a noisy sound in the audience, some people were booing, and some people were wailing. The witches of Hogwarts had flames of jealousy in their eyes, as if they wanted to burn Zhang Qiu to death. "You bitch, let go of my husband, let me do it." And among the boys, there were also many who were jealous of Yi Ting. Cedric from Hufflepuff almost bit his teeth. Harry looked at the center of the game stupidly, and an inexplicable regret surged in his heart. Why didn't he go to Ravenclaw at that time? But he didn't have time to get angry. Because someone was angrier than him. "Harry, Ron, take down that banner for me. Don't cheer for this bastard." In front of them, Hermione was furious. Harry obediently took down the banner with Yi Ting's head on his head, but he felt an inexplicable secret joy in his heart. Yi Ting, you and Zhang Qiu are so close, is this retribution?" Commentator Lee Jordan also took the opportunity to make a scene. "What a pity, the flower of the Ravenclaw field seems to have been taken in just the first game. I know many people are unwilling to accept this, draw your wands, everyone, but you have no chance." Lee's words were like a raging fire, instantly igniting the emotions on the field. Boos, scolding, and laughter intertwined, forming an indescribable atmosphere of enthusiasm. "Jordan." Professor McGonagall's voice behind him explained the game. "Don't make trouble for me." "Sorry, Professor," Lee Jordan laughed and quickly changed the subject. "Wait, what did I see? I just got Madame Hooch's match list, and Yi Ting's broom is actually a sweeping one." Lee looked unbelievable, as if he had discovered a new world. "Merlin's pants. This is an antique older than me. No wonder he flies slower than a snail, my grandma's broom is much faster than him." As soon as this was said, all the students saw it. When the player took off, Yi Ting's speed was so slow that he looked like an old tractor, which was particularly abrupt among a group of high-performance sports cars. Among the various positions in Quidditch, although the chaser is not as extreme as the seeker, speed is everything, it is not without speed requirements. In the Quidditch field, although the chaser does not rely on speed as much as the seeker, speed is by no means dispensable. Whether it is a breakthrough, a backup defense or a steal, even if the skills are superb, without the support of speed, the opponent may easily counterattack. At this moment, Zhang Qiu, who has become the focus of everyone, no longer dares to play tricks with Yi blatantly. The boos outside the court made her feel irritable and frowned. "Don't worry, Zhang Qiu, it's okay." Yi Ting, who was riding on the broom, smiled and comforted her. "When we win the game, those boos will only be the noise of jumping clowns." Qiu rolled his eyes at Yi Ting, looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, and a trace of worry flashed in his eyes. Will we win, Yi Ting? We will win. Yi Ting was full of confidence. The only suspense is how many points we can win. Episode 100, Not Getting Hurt is a Win. Soon, the captains of both teams shook hands, and with a whistle from Madame Hooch, the game officially began. Yi Ting stretched out his body and flew upwards in the sweep 1 star. Roger understood what he meant, and immediately passed the quaffle to him after grabbing it. The game has begun. Lee finally began to give a formal commentary. Both sides still adopted the conventional formation and tested each other. Currently, the ball is in the hands of Ravenclaw's Yi Ting. Lee praised him. This player shined in the trials, almost hitting the target every time he pitched, and even created a miracle of scoring a goal from a long distance. Now that he has finally stepped onto the real court, what kind of amazing data will he create? I'm already looking forward to it. The whole stadium seemed to be ignited, and cheers rose and fell. Lee's voice suddenly rose with a hint of surprise. Look what that is. The clothes of the Ravenclaw team members are all shining with unique badges. This is the latest masterpiece of the One U shop. It is not a winter cold-proof badge, but a revolutionary wind-proof badge. When riding a flying broom, hairstyle is the top priority. With this badge, your hairstyle will always beat Jordan. Can you please put your attention back on the game? Professor McGonagall's voice interrupted at the right time. Sorry, Professor. Davis passed the ball back to Yi Ting again. A great match. Suddenly, he screamed, Be careful, Yi Ting, Flint is rushing at you from behind. This guy has always been insidious and cunning. The audience covered their mouths and screamed. Flint's speed was as fast as lightning, flying directly towards Yi Ting, as if he was going to hit him. Yi Ting's speed was too slow in front of him, and it was impossible to dodge. Rookie, ride your broken broom home, Flint shouted excitedly, intending to knock Yi Ting off his broom, and then condescendingly mocked, Quidditch dream. Yi Ting turned his head and locked his eyes with Flint, who suddenly rushed up. He moved his mind and controlled the broom to no longer move forward in a straight line, but to climb up at a subtle angle, and the speed burst instantly, avoiding the fierce collision by a hair's breadth. Then, Yi Ting, who had just escaped, Ting seemed to break free from the constraints of inertia and fell rapidly in an almost impossible trajectory. At the same time, his broom handle was like a hammer, sweeping Flint's back fiercely. Flint was caught off guard and was hit off the broom. Like a kite with a broken string, he tumbled in the air for 2 weeks, before falling heavily to the ground. Wow. 2.5 turns in the air, so beautiful. Lee cheered loudly, as if he had become a diving commentator. This jump is graceful and does not raise much dust at all. If this is a diving competition, I will definitely give Flint a full score of 10. This incident made all the students dumbfounded. They thought they would see Yi Ting's miserable condition, but they did not expect the ending to be completely reversed, and Flint became the unlucky one. You are not dead, are you? Yi Ting passed the quaffle out while riding his broom close to Flint. At this time, he had a bit of apology on his face, and honestly touched the back of his head. You are too careless. Flint struggled to stand up and shouted angrily, Mrs. Hooch, that kid just hit me with a broom. This is definitely a malicious foul. However, Mrs. Hooch shook her head slightly, because from her perspective, Yi Ting just suddenly accelerated to avoid Flint's collision, while Flint lost control and flew out because of his excessive speed and sudden deceleration. Yi Ting did not commit a foul. Madame Hooch said coldly, It's you, Flint, hurry up and continue the game, or you can choose to leave the field. He never liked martial arts players like Flint, and now seeing him reaping the fruits of his own labor, Madame Hooch was secretly happy. Flint glared at Yi Ting fiercely, got back on his broom, and gritted his teeth and said, Just wait and see. Yi Ting scratched his head innocently, as if the instant acceleration and evasion just now was just a coincidence. He slowly flew into the sky and flew towards the Slytherin goal. The game continued fiercely, and Lee was still explaining. Ravenclaw's chaser Randolph received the ball, he sprinted to the front court like the wind, and then passed the ball to the middle. My God, when did Yi Ting appear there like a ghost? Yi Ting shuttled through the front court with the ball. Although his speed was not fast, he was very skillful. A lateral move attracted the defense of Slytherin's batsman Darian Pughs. What a great pass. The ball is back in Randolph's hands. Darian hurriedly chased and defended, forming a tense double-team situation. But Yi Ting was not to be outdone. He took advantage of the fact that he had no ball in his hand to shake off the 2 Slytherin batsmen and rushed straight to the scoring area. Randolph took the opportunity to pass the ball. Look at his flexible posture, twisting his waist, kicking his legs, leaning back, rotating the pull rod, and the ball went in. Lee screamed excitedly, This goal is so wonderful. The shooting posture is really perfect. Yi Ting's goal instantly ignited the scene, and the supporters burst into cheers and applause like a tidal wave. "See," I said, "Yi Ting is definitely the top chaser in this school. He scores as easily as drinking water." Li smiled proudly. He suddenly shouted again, "Everyone, look, the ring on Yi Ting's little finger. That ring has an anti-impact spell added to it, and it is with it that Yi can resist Slytherin's foul tactics. I saw a red one last time. That color is really beautiful, just right for Gryffindor. Brothers and sisters, listen to me, you must buy this one." Professor McGonagall waved her fist in dissatisfaction and glared at Lee. "Jordan, did Yi Ting give you advertising fees? Don't forget that your main job is a commentator." Yi Ting gave Lee a thumbs up from a distance, thinking that the advertising fee was really worth it. Slytherin's batsman Derek aimed at the bludger and hit it hard. "The ball has already flown towards Yi Ting," Lee reminded again. Yi Ting steadily controlled the flying broom, and his body flexibly moved to the right to avoid the flying bludger. At the same time, he caught Derek's gloomy smile and swinging bat from the corner of his eye. A cunning flashed across Derek's face, and the bat in his hand drew a sharp arc. The action seemed to be aimed at the bludger, but in fact, his target was Yi Ting's back. At this critical moment, Yi Ting's body leaned back with amazing flexibility, almost merging with the flying broom. At the same time, his arm was gently raised, and the elbow hit Derek's abdomen accurately. Derek felt that his internal organs seemed to be displaced by the elbow, and a sharp pain made him almost unable to breathe. He lost control of the flying broom and fell from the air. Derek's action, wow, it was so powerful. He turned 2 times in the air, and finally fell to the ground on his back. Lee's teasing voice echoed over the field. This kind of backfalling method can really stir up a cloud of dust, and the effect is really cool. But to be honest, this action is very dangerous. Derek dared to play like this. You must have put a lot of effort into training. The Slytherin team members began to protest, but Madame Hooch only saw Yi Ting use a backwards movement to avoid the bat, and she didn't see the elbow due to her blind spot. So, she decisively called a foul on Slytherin, giving Ravenclaw a chance to take a free throw. As a teammate, Roger saw it clearly. He flew to Becky, swallowed nervously, and asked, "Captain, do you remember what Yi Ting said in the locker room? If you don't get hurt, you win." Becky replied, with a hint of doubt in her eyes. Roger had a bitter face and a dry voice. He didn't mean that as long as the Slytherin people didn't get hurt, they would win, right? As 4 students of the Slytherin team were accidentally injured in succession, and each time they were called for a foul, the audience and players on the field began to notice something unusual. The flying broom that Ting rode seemed to be very slow, but in fact, it was also very slow. However, whenever he came into contact with the Slytherin team, he could always accelerate instantly with amazing explosive power, and at the same time dodge the opponent's attacks with various weird postures, and secretly launch a counterattack. This sudden change of speed made the attackers unable to defend themselves, and they would be hit if they were not careful. The members of the Slytherin Quidditch team gradually realized that Yi Ting was not the rookie they imagined, and his broom was definitely not a fire stick. So, they began to change their strategy and no longer regarded Yi Ting as the main target of attack. At the same time, Madame Hooch also noticed the abnormality of Yi Ting and began to stare at Yi Ting with full concentration. For Madame Hooch, even if Yi Ting was a little wizard she was optimistic about, she could not tolerate Yi Ting playing foul tactics. Newcomers are always like this. Once your playing style is understood by your opponent, it is easy to be targeted. But Yi Ting didn't care. His task on the court was not to increase the intensity of work for Madame Pomfrey. As long as the Slytherin guys didn't commit malicious fouls, Yi Ting wouldn't be ruthless. Now that his secret was discovered, Yi Ting no longer hid his strength and fully demonstrated the speed of his flying broom. And what kind of result could a full-powered Yi Ting produce? That is, Ravenclaw took the lead. With Amber's eyesight plus Eritake's strength plus Tartaglia's skills, it was simply bullying on the court. As the score difference gradually widened, the game became more and more intense and cruel. On the Slytherin side, the beaters Lucian Bull and Perrykin Derek also tried their best to smash the bludger at Yi Ting to stop him from scoring. What a pity, Yi Ting easily shook off the bludger and rushed into the scoring area again. He got 10 points. He raised his hand and the whole audience cheered. The Ravenclaw students were hoarse from shouting, but they couldn't help shouting because they saw Xingzai waving to them. In the Slytherin audience, you could hear a pin drop. Professor Snape's face was like a dark cloud before a rainstorm, so thick that water could drip out. If it weren't for his status as the dean, Snape would have rushed into the stadium and dragged Yi Ting directly for a urine test. He strongly suspected that Yi Ling drank the elixir before the game. Ting's crazy scoring ability reminded Snape of the Nightmare game more than 10 years ago. At that time, James Potter was so powerful in the final that he beat Slytherin. And now, history seems to be repeating itself. James Potter was also a chaser. Snape felt that today might create the biggest score difference in the history of Hogwarts. But fortunately, Zhang Qiu saved Slytherin's life. She rode on the Nimbus 2000, and her speed was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Slytherin seeker Terrence Higgs just caught a glimpse of the golden snitch, and before he could chase him, he felt a gust of wind whistling past his ears. Then, a deafening explosion rang in his ears, accompanied by white mist, and he was almost overturned by the sudden airflow. No one knew that the explosion was actually the sonic boom produced when the flying broom broke the speed of sound at a certain moment. This is simply an unheard-of miracle. Even those experienced Quidditch players 2.5 have never reached such a speed limit. Of course, this is not because of the technical level, but because of the lack of protection. As we all know, the atmosphere we live in is not a vacuum, and air resistance is an obstacle that cannot be underestimated in flight. The faster the flying broom flies, the greater the resistance it encounters. When the speed approaches the speed of sound, the air resistance is like a wall. Back then, the first attempt of the Muggle plane to cross the speed of sound ended up with a tragic disintegration in the air, and the plane was destroyed and the passengers died. In order to overcome the difficulty of the sound barrier, the Muggles racked their brains, strengthened the fuselage, improved the aerodynamic design, and went through untold hardships to overcome this hurdle. Metal-made planes can hardly withstand the barrier of the speed of sound, let alone a wooden flying broom. If ordinary wizards try rashly, they may end up in pieces. Only the Nimbus 2000 modified by Ting can generate magical protection, so that the rider can break through the sonic boom and be safe and sound. Of course, even so, Zhang Qiu only broke the sound barrier for a moment, but this short moment was enough for her to surpass her opponent and get the golden snitch first. She didn't know how long she had practiced this move. If it weren't for the wings of wind, she would have lost control several times and died. But the effect of this move was immediate. The Slytherin seeker witnessed all this in amazement. A blue figure drew a whistling upward arc in the air, and the speed gradually slowed down. Zhang Qiu used the potential energy of gravity to complete the deceleration in time and stopped in midair. She held the golden snitch high and ended the game.